Walk off. I spent about a year working as a DJ at one of the international vacation resorts. I worked at beach resorts in Mexico and the Bahamas, and I was at my last resort, a ski resort in Colorado. The manager for my team never arrived, as he was from Canada and got caught up in customs getting over the border. The head guy put this young kid in charge temporarily, and he was a total douche. It's around the holidays, and the nightclub was hopping. There's a great deal of talent, and the ladies kept coming in my booth to flirt and make requests. The kid is jealous and starts telling me to keep the girls out and focus on the music. He ends up telling me to lock the door and not let anyone in. Fine. He ends up coming back and knocks on the door as he wants to come in and scope out the women. I know what I'm doing, and I'm sick of his BS. I tell him that I can't open the door as he told me to lock it and not let anyone in. I finally relent and let him in. He's screaming at me, and I tell him that I was simply doing what he told me to do. The place is packed at this time, and he tells me that I'm fired for not letting him in. I look at him and I ask if he's serious. He is beyond annoyed and tells me, yep, I'm out of here. I turn to the crowd, stop the song, and tell the crowd that I'm sorry, but I've been fired. I close things up and walk out. At this point, I was ready to head home anyway, and the rules were that if you quit, you had to pay your way home. If you were fired, they had to fly you home. As it was the holidays, they couldn't get a flight for about a week, so I got to hang out at the resort and do nothing for a week. Wow, win-win. You know what? I completely agree with everything you did, and you're well within your right to do it. Now, I'm someone that quite likes club nights, sort of like events, late night music stuff. There is nothing worse than this happening. Thankfully, I've never been to an event where this has happened. But as a punter in the crowd, having a good time, I can't think of anything worse than a DJ just stopping in the middle of the night with no one else sort of replacing him, or, you know, even if he just like went on Spotify or something, it would just be so bad. It would be awful. So in terms of what you did, having a massive impact on the club, I mean, you know it, you're a DJ, but yeah, that is just like, it's one of the worst things that you could possibly do. So it's very, very good revenge, and yeah, good karma for this guy who don't really know what his sort of motive was throughout the entire thing here. I would be inclined to agree with you. He was probably just a bit jealous or just weird in general, but yeah, weird. Somebody asked in the comments, did he try to sort of take back the firing, or did he maintain that he was right? And then what did they do without a DJ? Exactly, it's a good question. OP said no, and I accepted it as I was ready to go home. They had other guys try and play music until they got another DJ, and overall it worked out great for me, so yeah, fair play to you. Neighbor said I was a bad neighbor. Help me make this true. I live with my driving age kids. Each of us has a car, plus my son has a hobby car he works on in his spare time. It's fully tagged and insured, just currently undrivable due to the back-ordered parts. I have no issue with the extra space it takes. He's a good kid with great friends, and he stayed out of trouble. I'm definitely not perfect, but I feel like I always consider how my actions may affect others, especially my neighbors. I had terrible neighbors before moving here and wanted to have a little community on my next move, which I thought I found here. I share garden veggies and baked goods, take care of pets and watch homes when people are out of town, pull packages out of the rain, you name it. If I have it, I share it. If I can help, I do. I'm the neighbor people call when they need something, and I'm happy to oblige. Lately though, things have been tense. After a small fender bender, my son has been saving for repairs. At the same time, his hobby car is out of service. He's been welding something for the car and it's on a jack stand. His uncle lent him a car to use in the meantime, and we needed it anyway as we're relocating our business and it's a larger vehicle. It was that or renting a U-Haul and having that parked outside for 2 weeks. Then my car had issues and I had to rent one for a week while repairs were being completed. So we've had 2 more cars than usual. We live in a regular residential neighborhood with no HOA where street parking is totally normal. The 2 extra cars were parked in the street. Temporary situation that was explained to the neighbors when they first asked why. Recently, one neighbor offered to pay to have my son's daily driver car towed, the one with minor visual damage. It's parked in our driveway, not the street. You can't tell that there's more damage underneath than what's visible. I get that she's a perfectionist. Her yard and house looks like a magazine cover. She gets annoyed by minor things, but we can't be like her. Can't afford it financially or emotionally. That bothered me, but I let it go. I've been trying to figure out a cost-effective solution. But then, another neighbour, Emily, pushed me over the edge. Weeks ago, she messaged me upset that someone parked across from her double driveway, asking me to tell my son not to park there. I looked, and he wasn't parked anywhere near her house. I asked for clarification and got no response, so I chalked it up to her having a bad day. Today, I saw a car parked there and mentioned the text conversation to my son. He laughed and said she'd already ranted at him about someone else parking there. He tried to explain he doesn't park down there, but she wouldn't listen and didn't seem to care. The suspect car belongs to Tom, another neighbour, who was the one who'd parked there previously, during a business trip to avoid tree work happening next door to him. He'd even asked us all beforehand, in a group chat, if that spot was okay. In order to avoid more drama with Emily, I called Tom and told him what had transpired previously, and he moved it to our yard instead. He was flabbergasted, as they speak regularly and she mentioned nothing to him. Let me say this again, it's a public road, anyone can park there, and there's no way that car actually blocked Emily from using her driveway unless she's dealing with a serious driving impairment, which she's not. But she does have a reputation as a pot stirrer, and I think that may be one reason I made more of an effort to be nicer to her over the years, so that I don't become a target for her. But the more I thought about it, the more annoyed I got. So I messaged her directly and pointed out that she seemed upset with Tom, but was projecting that onto us. I told her I spoke to Tom and he moved his car up today so that it isn't in front of her driveway. She replied saying my son did park near her house once, but across the street and next to her driveway. She claimed a telephone pole makes it hard to maneuver their truck. She began ranting about Tom again. I told her maybe we could request the pole be moved and that I'd helped a client do this recently. That is when she lost it. This is all in writing, by the way, so there's no denying it. Suddenly, it wasn't about blocked driveways or poles. It was about how we have too many cars and that makes us bad, inconsiderate neighbours. She said some pretty nasty things and I ended up blocking her. I had no idea that each driver having their own car could be an issue. Her reaction was completely uncalled for. She's the one I've helped the most over the years, and I've never once asked her for a thing. But now, I'm honestly fed up. Lately I've felt low, and this just confirms it. I've let myself be taken advantage of, treated like a doormat, all while trying to be the good neighbour. Recently, the neighbour that was her usual target moved away. I am now positive that I'm her replacement. I'm also sad that I'm allowing two people to change how I am. It really made me happy to be the go-to neighbour, but now I feel defeated. So help me find joy again, Reddit. Plastic yard flamingos are officially on order. What else can I do to be petty, annoying, and inconsiderate? Fantastic. All right, guys, that is where you come in. Now, I will say there is an update to this one, so this might just be temporary, but that is where you come in nonetheless. What is the most annoying thing that you can think of to annoy one of your neighbors? Just make their life considerably worse, knowing as well who this woman is, like an absolute perfectionist, just someone who obviously has so much pride in their house, too much pride probably, and yeah, that spills over onto the rest of the street, etc. It actually reminds me of my grandparents' street in America, in Virginia, where they do have an HOA, and I think it's pretty strict, but they kind of like it because it sort of keeps everyone in order. All the houses look very similar. You know, you've got to take care of your house, which is a good thing. So I do think sometimes an HOA can be a good thing, but obviously that isn't the case here. And even still, I mean, I'm not sure that many HOAs in the US say that you have a limit on how many cars you're allowed to have. Maybe they do actually, I'm not sure. But this doesn't seem too outrageous depending on where it is in the world. If that was the case here, yeah, that would be a problem. I mean, you can barely have more than a car per family where I live, to be honest. I mean, 2 is sort of pushing it. But nonetheless, I want to see this woman burn just because she's just so like up herself, isn't she? If they were really legitimate sort of requests, then it would be fine, but they're not. And also, she's forgetting how much Tom has helped her over the years, and I feel bad for Tom. So let's help him get some revenge. What would you do? I think plastic flamingos is a great idea. Just make your house potentially as garish and horrible as possible. there's nothing she can do, right? It's public street, and your house is private. So, there's no HOA, nothing she can do. What would you suggest? I mean, I'm thinking sort of like put up Christmas lights immediately now. Bearing in mind that this was posted just 8 days ago. So yeah, Christmas lights in summer and just keep them up. Take the hit on the electricity. That'll be elite. But yeah, as I said, there is an update to this story already posted a couple of days later. Let's see what happened next. Not the update you guys want, but more drama and some karma. I was working from home when I saw a person taking photos of our cars. I immediately knew it was code enforcement. I went out to speak to him and he said he received a call about our cars. Shocker, right? He slipped up and mentioned the borrowed car. I immediately knew it was her. She's the only one who knew we borrowed it and that we didn't own it. Not that it couldn't be anyone else, but he showed up first thing the day after her latest rant. He kept referring to our cars as abandoned, including the one parked in the street. I found this confusing and told him that all of these but one are daily drivers. The one that isn't will be once repaired. I later read the online complaint where she said we have multiple cars abandoned on our property and on the street for over 2 years. This is completely false and is a blatant lie. Apparently, the borrowed car sticker was expired and he said he'd have to come back and check on it. After he left, my son put the sticker on the tag. It was in the glove box. Go figure. I later called the inspector back to let him know about the sticker and to ask what other steps we needed to take, if any. He said he was going to come back in 7 days and that we cannot leave the car parked in the same area. We have to make sure it's moved every day since it's registered to a different address, and he'll take photos. I told him that won't be a problem. My son drives it every day. He's also among the pettiest people I've come to know. You'll never guess where it's parked. In another twist of fate, I found a website that shows all the open violations of a specified address. That's where I found a snippet of the complaint she made. I decided to look up her address too. The same day the inspector stopped at my house, there were 2 complaints opened for her address. The complaint on ours was made the day before. I saw him walk over there when he left from my house, and he was over there for quite a while. I guess he was giving her an update. I also guess while he was there, he saw her overgrown, trash-filled backyard. That's what one complaint was labelled. I'm not sure what the second complaint is for, but she's had multiple renovation and construction projects that she's bragged to everyone and their mother about. When I looked up the zoning violation, it didn't show details or comments, and when I searched further, her address has no recent permits. Like, in the past 7 years, not one. What does it mean to live in a glass house? Yeah, well, clearly this woman is just nuts. I don't know how many times I've said it now over the years, but for someone that knows, and this woman must know, that she is not fully abiding by the law, why is she getting involved in someone else's business who is obviously going to seek some sort of revenge, or at the very least is going to be like, okay, you're doing this to me, I'm going to at least check that you're doing everything right as well. Like, if you know that you're not doing everything 100% right, then why would you make someone else, or even give someone like a tiny incentive to check on your life? It's just so dumb. But I guess this woman is dumb, like just lying and getting people involved in things that she didn't need to get them involved in. Karma. It's deserved. There you go. What can I say? I broke my wife's heart. How do I save my marriage? This was originally posted back in 2016. I am a 29-year-old man, and my wife, who is 28, and I have been married for 4 years, together for 6. I love her deeply. However, recently I've developed an infatuation for a woman I work with. I didn't cheat, and I have a strictly work relationship with her. I recognize my feelings as a mere crush, but still felt guilty and needed to talk about it. About 2 months ago, I posted on a forum, not Reddit, about this woman, and I found sympathy. It helped me understand how crushes in a long-term relationship work. A month ago, I came home to my wife having printed my post. She confronted me, and as I was taken by surprise, I didn't really know how to explain myself. I couldn't lie either, so I just apologized to her. She read me my post while crying. I cannot post it entirely here, but basically I said she was a, quote, breath of fresh air, The reason I'm happy to go to work. I wish I could hold her in my arms and know how she smells. I often dream of her. Sometimes I lie down and imagine her in front of me." End quote. These were things I was thinking but couldn't say out loud. They were things that could have been written in a diary. They were private thoughts, and I never imagined my wife would read them. In the end, it's just a fantasy. Ever since that day, my wife has barely spoken to me. She refuses to discuss it and won't look me in the eye the rare times she addresses me. She moved into our guest room. She told me she was getting ready to divorce and would file when she has enough money, and that I shouldn't hope that I'm free to pursue that woman. I understand why she is hurt, but it's just an infatuation. It's not comparable to the love and history I have for her. How can I get it through her? She told me she never had feelings for another man and that I betrayed her. She won't stay married to a man who yearns for another woman. I told her I would change jobs, but she just said I'll still dream of her. She is completely closed off. What can I do? All right, let's jump straight into the comments here, because this is a tough one. I mean, you've really shot yourself in the foot here, but you're not the first person to be in a long-term relationship and have a crush on someone else. It's just a shame that you've posted it online and your wife's found out about it. Anyway, let's get into the comments. Somebody said, "So, have you gotten a new job yet? What have you done to show your wife that you're serious about your marriage and that she's the only one who matters to you?" That is a great point. It shouldn't take you saying to her, "I'll get a new job," and then her saying, "Well, you're just going to still think about her." Just get a new job. Like, you want to cut as much contact with this woman as you can. But yeah, show your wife that you mean what you say and that you are willing to sort of like, yeah, do anything in your power to stay with her. OP replied, "She won't let me talk to her or touch her. Sometimes she will leave the room when I come in. She's like a wall. I tried buying her favorite flowers and wrote a card, but she didn't take them. I am invisible to her. I was looking for jobs when I informed her I would change jobs to avoid the woman, but she told me not to bother as she was leaving. In this economy, I cannot easily risk being unemployed, especially if I'll end up divorced." But then again, that's the point, right? If you really did want to stay with her and you want to prove your loyalty, you would move jobs. So I think if you do want to stay with her, and maybe you don't, by the way, but if you do, then you definitely have to leave your job. Somebody else said, "There's an innocent crush, and then there's wanting something to happen between the two of you. Your wife knows this, everybody knows this, and you should know this. You wanted to hold your coworker in your arms, etc., etc. It's not the fact that you have a crush on someone. It happens naturally and it's human nature. It's the fact that you have a crush and wanted things to happen between you two, and that's what broke your wife's heart. Also, in the first place, if you wanted to keep your thoughts private, you shouldn't have posted it on the internet." That's actually a very good point, and I need to sort of think about what I said earlier. I meant what this user has just said, as in everyone, has crushes or thinks that other people are good looking or whatever. You're right though. It's one thing thinking that someone else is good looking or having a crush on them. It's another actually thinking to yourself, I want to be in their arms and know what they smell like. That's another step. Anyway, 5 months later, July the 3rd, 2016, we got this update. I'd forgotten about this post and I am back to update, so maybe seeing my stupidity could prevent someone else from making the same mistakes. I cringe when I read today what I wrote months ago, and it seems ridiculous to me that I could have felt this way about another woman. I wrote that I would imagine my former co-worker while lying in bed, but in the end, when my wife stopped acknowledging my existence, waking up without seeing her face was just absolute torture. I really took all I had for granted until I almost lost it. So I took some of the advice and decided to court my wife again the hardest I could. Of course, the first step was looking for another job, and it took me a month, but I managed to find a similar position in another enterprise. That is good to hear. I did what was suggested, of taking over every chore, and she stopped ignoring me, but would simply stare at me with some kind of hostility and go on with her life. There we go, that's progress. I tried flowers, but she would leave them to die. My wife's dominant love language is physical, but I wouldn't dare try touching her, so I went for telling her. I somehow realised it was really the content of what I wrote about the other woman, which obviously, when you are deep in a crush, is amplified, that really hurt her. I tried engaging her in conversations so we could talk about what was happening to us, but more importantly what I did to her, but she remained closed off. And so I started writing her letters and would leave them under her pillow. At first, I apologised for everything. For writing the post, for not putting an end to the crush faster, for making her feel like another woman could hold a higher place of importance to me, and for not taking the initiative to change jobs earlier. For making her life hard by creating this situation, which ended in her sleeping in the guest room of her own house, for making her cry and causing stress to her. Then I wrote her love letters, telling her how much I loved her, how the crush couldn't compare to the deep love I have for her. I was chewed for saying I loved her because of our history in my last post, but I was misunderstood. I meant that the love I have for her has gotten stronger with time. 5 years ago I loved her, but wouldn't have given her one of my organs if she needed one, for example, while now I would without hesitation. Our history is what caused the attachment to grow stronger, therefore no random crush could override that. I was awed in front of my crush and wrote sappy things about her, but in the end I do not know this woman on a personal level, while I've seen the worst of my wife and the love remains. I told her how beautiful she was and how impressed and proud I was with her development as a person since we've met, how grateful I was for her presence in my life, and every single thing I was thankful for that she did and enhanced my life, how much I needed her and missed hearing her tell me how her day went, laugh at my bad jokes, and basically just missed hearing the sound of her voice. This is a small sample, but it must have taken a good 3 weeks of daily letters until she answered me back. She answered with a letter of her own, telling me how much I have hurt her with my crush, how I made her feel invisible next to that woman, how I never told her such loving words until the letters, how much she hated me, but also how she loved me and missed me too. Her letter allowed me to feel her vulnerability. After reading it, I cried and went to see her. We locked eyes, she cried, and we held each other for a long time. She started talking to me again and softened. Honestly, the possibility of the marriage ending just like that scared the both of us. As of today, we are, to my surprise, mostly back to normal, and actually I feel closer to her. We continue with the letters, which have helped increasing our emotional intimacy. I make an effort to tell and show her my love. I'm very grateful that she's given me a second chance, and even more so that she has decided to put the crush behind us. We had maybe 2 fights since, but she hasn't brought it up and she doesn't punish me. It really wasn't the crush on itself, but how I went about it and the lack of affection from my part in comparison. Maybe I'm being optimistic here, but I truly think we're going to get through this. We'll be going to couples counselling after our vacation just to make sure things are really settled between us. Wow, that is a very positive ending to this one. A couple of comments to finish things off before I give my overall thoughts. Somebody said, "It's nice how hard you're trying. The thing you need to continue to work on is not stopping this once you've got her completely back. For me, I would never get over what you said. I would have filed for divorce immediately. I'm glad things are working out for you though." And OP replied to this saying, "Thank you, I do not plan on stopping. I realised I wasn't putting enough work into my marriage before." Somebody else said, "Yeah buddy, save the letters, and when you have a fight or you forget how much you love her, you break that out and remind yourself." And finally, somebody said, "I would kill or die to see my late wife again for even 1 second. Treasure her and don't F up again." Okay, and there we go. That is the first episode on this channel in a very long time that I think has had a positive ending, which is lovely. But I do agree with the comments as well. Like, this is sort of just the beginning. I also think it's quite hard. Like, you can't keep up that level of affection forever. Or like, you know, doing all the chores or continuing to write like I mean, maybe you could. I'm not sure about all the chores, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to have to come back down a little bit at some point. I'm sure it would naturally. But yes, I do agree with the comments. Like, don't take this for granted. Especially that final comment. I mean, that hits hard. "I would kill or die to see my late wife again for even 1 second. Treasure her and don't screw up again." Woof. Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's good advice, isn't it? From people saying, look, just remember throughout all of this, no matter what happens, this all has made you realize how much you love her. One key line there in that though, that you said was how I never told her such loving words until you wrote the letters. Therefore, like, I kind of get it from her perspective. She's probably like, I've never seen or heard the affection from my partner that some random colleague at work is getting. Like, how is this fair? Like, imagine how painful that would be reading that about another woman. So from her perspective, I get it. Maybe it's sort of what you needed yourself to wake up and realize that, like, actually, yeah, you haven't shown us enough affection to your wife. But also, I don't know, maybe you should have done it already. That's a bit weird. I don't know. I also do, I don't know, it's a little bit weird thinking like, I want to know how a woman at work feels in my arms. You see what I'm kind of saying? I'm like, I don't know, I'm not fully buying this, really. And I do agree with that comment that said, like, if that was done to me, I would have divorced. As always, easier said than done in the moment, but still, I'll take your word for it, but you've got a long way to go, that's for sure. All modifications must be restored to the original. My family and I moved into a house in 2008. 5 bedrooms, 3,200 square feet, $1,600 a month. It was a decent price in 2008, and the rent stayed the same for many years. Since I'm reasonably handy, I would fix things myself rather than bother an old man. I lived there so long that I also made quite a few upgrades. In 2024, the owner passed away and his son inherited the property. A week later, he gave notice of intent to inspect the property. During that inspection, he kept trying to open drawers and look through my belongings, which isn't legally allowed, and was rude when I stopped him. As he left, he handed me a notice that my rent was increasing to $4,000 monthly, about $1,000 over market value. I would have paid higher rent if it had been reasonable, but I wasn't paying that much. My month-to-month lease was worded to require 3 months' notice to raise the rent. I pointed out this fact, then gave him notice that I'd be moving out at the end of those 3 months. A few days later, I was served with an eviction notice. The month-to-month lease also required 3 months' notice to evict me without cause, so he tried evicting me with cause. He claimed that I'd made unauthorized modifications to the house and cited the back door with a dog door installed. I still had the original door in the garage and the previous owner's permission, so it was neither unauthorized nor a modification. Regardless, the judge decided I needed to move out within 30 days or he would grant the eviction. Additionally, he explicitly ordered that all modifications be restored to the original. This is where the malicious compliance comes in, and I'm sure you already saw this coming. All the smart house additions I made were removed. The tool shed in the yard was removed. The pond was filled in. Closet organizers were torn out. Garage organizers were removed. The updated appliances were replaced with basic models. Every update I made was removed, and then I moved out. He sued me for removing everything. His lawyer cited a law that says any changes to the property become part of the property, and it's illegal to remove them when vacating the property. However, my lawyer pointed out the order from the previous judge, stating, quote, all modifications must be restored to the original. I provided receipts for all the things I had removed, proving that I had added them and was required to remove them. I won the case, and he had to pay my legal fees. A few months later, I got a call from his sister. Some of my mail had not been forwarded, and she wanted to ensure I got it. We had a short conversation about the entire ordeal. She told me the house was actually inherited by 4 siblings. Her brother had lied to everyone. First, he'd raised the rent, knowing I would move out. He already had a deal to sell the house to one of those big rental companies. He told his siblings the house had negative equity and nobody would get anything from the sale. In reality, the house was paid off and worth about $700,000. They'd made an offer on the house, which included all the stuff I later removed. He couldn't afford to replace everything, so they took him to court over the sale. Since all 4 siblings were listed as owners, all were named in the lawsuit, which is how they learned the truth. In the end, the house sold for $550,000. In exchange for not pressing fraud charges against him, his 3 siblings split the proceeds, and he got nothing. Okay, there we go. Phenomenal story. First of all, before I give my thoughts on it, OP has answered some common questions from Reddit. Starting with this. How did everything happen so fast after the landlord died? OP says, I guess my wording wasn't clear. I don't actually know when he died. I only talk to the guy once or twice a year. This all started about a week after I was notified of his death in February of 2024. I moved out in early June. We went to court over the removals in September, and I spoke with his sister in December. Everything I posted happened over the span of nearly a year. Next question. Why did OP rent for 17 years instead of buying a house? Well, I moved into the house during my divorce in 2008. Buying a house during a divorce isn't easy. I chose this house because it was large enough for me and 3 kids and close to their schools. By the time they moved out, I was set in my ways. I planned to buy another place at some point, but I was in no rush. Next question. This is interesting. How did his siblings not know what he was up to? I don't know. Everything involving me was my first-hand experience. Everything that happened after that was second-hand information I got from his sister. I can't confirm what she told me. I can only share what she said. Next question. Why did I do so many upgrades on a rental? I wasn't tearing out walls or replacing floors. Everything I did was reversible and done to make my life easier. Also, the landlord was retired, never raised the rent, and always gave permission. Even though I was renting, it was my home. Next question. Why did the judge only give me 30 days to move out? Well, the eviction process didn't happen overnight. I thought this was obvious, but some people seemed confused. From the point that I gave him 3 months notice to seeing a judge, nearly 2 months had passed. There's a time process that has to be followed. Interesting question now. How did I remove everything so quickly? Well, actually, none of the stuff was that difficult to remove. The pond wasn't a small lake. It was a small 300-gallon hole in the backyard with a few goldfish and plants. It took us about 3 hours to drain and fill it in. The shed was sold to someone who took it away on a flatbed. Organizers were modular. Appliances are similar to replace. The most time-consuming was replacing all the smart plugs with standard outlets and smart bulbs with regular bulbs. How are we supposed to believe that you had all those receipts? Yeah, that is a fair question, because I suppose, as you said, it's very important that you did have the receipts, but for all those years you kept all the receipts? I suppose you must be very organized. Well, I've been self-employed for 29 years. I keep every receipt because Uncle Sam doesn't mess around when it comes time for an audit. Most receipts come to my email, but I also have a portable receipt scanner for everything else. That's very organized, I've got to say. I mean, I'm self-employed. I've not kept all my receipts. Yes, I have the emailed ones, I suppose, if I was really forced to find them, but according to my dad, I should be more organized. But anyway, last question. How would anyone believe the house had negative equity? Well, again, I can't speak for them, but I can share a personal anecdote. My mum died in 2022. While settling her estate, we discovered that she had a reverse mortgage. Essentially, a company loaned her money with no mortgage payments. In return, they had to be paid back if she died or tried to sell the house. The house wasn't worth enough to pay them off, so we let them take it. Reverse mortgages are prevalent and often predatory. I don't know if he told them this, but it's not far-fetched to believe a house has negative equity. Exactly, yeah, it doesn't even have to be that specific thing, but houses with negative equity, that can't be that uncommon. And I suppose if your brother was the one that said, you know what, look, don't worry about this, I'll take care of it and I'll let you know what's going on with it, you probably would just trust what he said about it. Well, maybe not after hearing that he was lying the whole time. Okay, there we go. That clears a few things up, but brilliant start to the episode. I suppose the only real gripe I have with the conclusion of this one is that the brother didn't get any jail time. I mean, that would have been the icing on the cake, but at least he's not getting any of that money. And by the way, that's a lot of money. What is that? 550K. He would have got, well, all of it, I suppose, if he had his way, or 700,000 of it. In the end, all his siblings are getting, what, 170K roughly? Is that about right? 180K? 183K? Is that right? Yes. 183, 333. And he's getting none. So he's $183,000 down for being a fraud. Good stuff. And well done to you, OP, as well, for dealing with this. Because, yeah, it sounds tough. And that 30 days to move out eviction note that you had to sort of go by and stand by because of the judge giving you that, I mean, that is awful. So I hope you're all right, but well done to you. Now for our next malicious compliance story. You think I'm fudging my hours? You're right. Here's my real hours. I started working for a non-profit in 2019 after being a volunteer member since 2000. It was supposed to be temporary for 3 months or so, but the non-profit dragged their feet hiring a permanent replacement. I'm fairly well off. Not filthy rich, but debt-free and comfortable. And didn't need the money. So I never billed for my hours after working 15 months full time. It was supposed to be $25 per hour, Canadian currency, but I was willing to work for free if they just found a replacement in a reasonable time. They were pressuring me for an invoice, so I finally invoiced them for 40 hours a week for 15 months, and it was about a high $60,000. They were livid for a variety of reasons that I didn't understand. They accused me of lying about my hours because I was a new father and my wife had gone back to work after maternity leave, and there's no way that I could have worked that much. When I told them I had my son in daycare instead of staying at home with him, they sarcastically said, "Now you know what it's like to work an actual job like the rest of us." They were mad that I wasn't volunteering my time anymore like I used to, but I insisted I was, and that my build time was only for the TV bingo fundraiser and not for any other non-profit activities. They didn't believe me. I tried to tell them my hours were actually more than I billed for, and my hourly rate is greatly reduced compared to what I normally charge for all the work I was doing. IT, e-commerce, web design, marketing, HR operations, bookkeeping, TV production, etc. But they said they didn't care about the rate reduction. They insisted that I charge my normal rates for my actual hours and then deduct 10 hours a week for volunteering, which is about 10 times more hours than any of them volunteer for. Okay, bet. So I started charging them $40 to $125 per hour depending on the task. I recorded all my tasks and hours in great detail. I charged for any time I spent doing what was normally volunteer work for the non-profit. Then I finally deducted 10 hours a week. I was billing an average of 50 hours a week after the volunteer hours were deducted. I also took the opportunity to start hiring more people under me on their dime so I could work way less than I did in the first 15 months, but still get paid the same, if not more. They couldn't say anything because it was exactly what they asked for. I was billing $1,000 per week before malicious compliance, and then about $3,000 after, which I started trimming back down closer to $1,000 a week after cutting my own hours. These guys kept doubling down and accusing me of incompetence and fraud over the next year and a half that I continued working, but I didn't care anymore. They turned my passion into a terrible job that I didn't need, so I stayed until all my amazing employees were hopefully set up for success, and then I wrote that non-profit out of my life for good. I didn't feel any guilt over being paid for my time with them because I had raised more money for them in 30 months, $30 million gross, about 20 million net, than they had raised in 100 years before then. Wow, sounds like you were very good at your job. Sorry, you're volunteering. I think it's very telling when somebody is working at a place, volunteering, whatever, but they're clearly not that concerned with money or hours, etc. That they're not in this for the money. I mean, they were a volunteer before, then they sort of got a temporary job. I think it's probably best to sort of let them be, especially when they're doing so well like they are. Also, I mean, just something that immediately springs to my mind is if somebody is making a non-profit that much money, then the non-profit should probably be paying them a good amount anyway, even if it isn't it's a charity, you're not going to be getting millions and millions, but surely it's not worth being pedantic about this sort of thing. It's just confusing, right? So they started by pressuring you for an invoice, OP, despite the fact that you didn't really care that much. Then once you gave them that invoice, they were like, no, you're lying. It's just strange. What were they actually trying to achieve? Maybe they were told that, no, come on, full-time employee, we have to pay you, whatever. But it just got a bit weird. I don't understand it. OP's actually said in the comments down below, the non-profit world is especially entitled. Interesting. It can get rather toxic. I mean, how? I mean, look, it's a shame. You are giving them so much value. My mum works for a charity and she is trying to work out how to get more money in. Fundraising is extremely hard, especially in this day and age. But for you to be doing that much and them still to be being oh, you're overcharging us in terms of your hours, or you're lying about hours, etc. It's weird. You're so good at your job, clearly. I don't know why these people are sucking the fun out of something that you're so good at and, well, at least used to really enjoy. Now for our next post. I brought the company to a standstill to make a point. I worked in the engineering department of a smaller manufacturing company, around 70 to 80 employees. My responsibility, among other things, was to handle any design changes, edit part and assembly drawings, bills of materials, etc. Previously, this was all handled by putting together a packet of actual paper documents that had to be shuffled from engineering to manufacturing. Sometimes ping-ponging back and forth if we were doing something complicated that required input from various people within those departments. Eventually, the company started to implement a software-driven procedure that was supposed to eliminate the stacks of paper that would sometimes get lost on someone's desk. The problem was that our bare-bones staff didn't really have time to learn all of the ins and outs of the software and refine the process to be truly efficient. Basically, it was left so that if an item was entered into an engineering change order, it was locked down so that no one could build one, but also a customer couldn't even order one, or any machine that this item happened to be a component of until the change process was completed. And sometimes this could take weeks. I tried explaining several times that if we ever had to work on some item that is used in several of our products, this would bring everything to a screeching halt. My manager at the time understood this, but could never get all of the people who needed to work on the software procedure to sit down and finalize everything. One day, I was tasked with changing the design of a hardware component that was used in every machine we built. I told my manager that as soon as I started the process, no one in sales would be able to enter an order for any customers until the process would be completed. He shrugged and said, "Do it," knowing that I was right. Within 30 minutes of getting started, a salesman came to my desk asking why he couldn't enter an order. I explained what was happening. He left, and soon after, the VP of the company was at my desk asking what needed to be done. So I told him he needed to corral everyone needed to hash out how the software was supposed to work properly instead of the half-assed just lock everything down deal they left off with. He immediately called in whoever was on that list. It took a few days, as I recall, and the component in question was expedited to be approved within the week. To this day, I use this story in interviews whenever I'm asked one of those questions like, give me an instance where you had to solve a major problem in the workplace. I mean, that is the definition of a major problem in the workplace that you solve, so pretty good story to use. I reckon your manager during this whole ordeal was also on the malicious compliance train. Like when he shrugged and said, "Do it," knowing that you were in the right, that just shows he knows that you know what's going on and you're both sort of like, yeah, this is a terrible idea, but we're getting told to do it by a higher up, so let's just do it. And then we'll maybe get the I told you so moment in the aftermath. It feels like one of those stupid things where if somebody had just listened, this would never have happened. This obviously was always going to be a bad idea anyway. I mean, how can you not take orders on every single little product that a particular piece or whatever is involving when you have to change it in a certain way or whatever? Like, it's just ridiculous. Interestingly, OP's actually said in the comments down below that his manager here was one of the few he really liked. He stuck up for his guys, but it was always like jousting windmills for him with upper management. There you go. Upper management's the problem here. It's not the talented people like you that know what they're doing. Now for our next story. If your pay raise isn't enough, quit. Okay then, I got a job as a security guard after leaving the army because I wasn't qualified to do much else, and I hadn't decided if I was going to college yet or not. The company refused to pay very much, so they had high turnover. Because of that turnover, they had small raises built in at 90 days, 6 months, and a year as an incentive to stay on. By the way, this took place around 1992. I needed a job, and until I had my trash together, this would do. So I showed up and I worked. My 1-year anniversary rolls around, and I don't see my 50 cents an hour raise in my paycheck, but something more like 35 cents. So I called the boss. My 3 and 6 month raises had been delivered with no issues, so I was surprised my 1-year anniversary hadn't shown up. Supposedly, they wanted to give all employees a raise, so they did. And yes, I got a small raise, along with all the other guards, a few hundred of us. It was something like 35 cents an hour for each of us. Okay, fine, but what about my promised 50 cents an hour? As far as I was concerned, this 35 cents an hour was something you initiated after promising me more, so this is bonus. When I called the manager, I was told I wasn't going to get a raise for my 1-year raise because you just got a raise. No one gets 2 raises at once. If your pay raise isn't enough, then quit. In other words, they were trying to claim a 35 cents an hour raise for every employee somehow was overriding the fact that I was owed an additional 50 cents an hour longevity raise. I'm sure there were others caught up like that. Fine, they want to give me 35 cents an hour of a raise and tell me that that's equal to the 85 cents an hour. I'll find something better. I spent the next week calling in sick and showing up late while job hunting. I called the office at the end of my last day and I told them I was done and they could find someone else, giving them no notice at all. Panic mode ensued. Everyone else was at 40 hours for the week and they hated paying overtime. One of the salaried managers had to cover for me. They told me to quit, so I did. I'm a teacher now, near retirement. My raises are still trash, but at least I can barely live off of it and I have a trashy union for now, which is more than I had then. A few more cents an hour and they could have kept me as a wage slave. Crazy that I'd even consider it now, looking back on it. At least I enjoy my job today, as crazy as the kids are. I've seen this type of story time and time again. Surely, and I've said this so many times now, surely it is worth just paying your employees a tiny bit more money. Like 50 cents per hour more. It's not that much in the grand scheme of things, is it really? I'm not going to do the maths, because I don't need to. It really isn't that much. A few dollars extra a day, to then not have to go through the entire process of losing somebody that clearly is good at their job, like you've kept it for a year and there's no sign of them saying, oh, you're not doing it well, to find somebody else in an industry and in your company where there's so much turnover. How is that worth it? Like, surely just like the people that are good at their job, pay them a bit more. That's sort of what promotions are, I suppose. Give them more responsibility, keep them on, like show them that they are worth it to your company. But no, if you're doing this sort of stuff, I'm sorry, you don't deserve to keep people like OB. Now for our next malicious compliance. Use all your PTO before December 31st or lose it. All right, don't mind if I do, even if the project burns. This happened a couple of years ago at my old job. A pretty demanding corporate gig where we were always juggling tight deadlines, constant emails, and way too many meetings that could have been Slack messages. Around early November, HR sent out one of those all-staff emails. Sorry, I have to interrupt myself there. There's actually nothing I hate more than meetings that could have just been a message. It's so annoying, or just even an email. Like the amount of times that I respond to an email where someone has said, can we just jump on a quick call? And I'm like, yeah, we can do, but you could also just email me a few points, like, a couple of paragraphs, very quickly, and I can look at them in my own time and respond, and then neither of us have to schedule. If you work in a job like that, guys, where there are too many meetings, where you think, what is the point of this? You could have just literally sent a notification in Slack or something. Comment down below. Does it annoy you? Or do you quite like the meetings? I probably know the answer. Anyway, let's carry on. Around early November, HR sent out one of those all-staff emails with a bright red banner and urgent tone. It read something like this. Reminder, all unused PTO must be taken before December 31st. We will not be allowing rollovers this year. Please schedule your remaining days immediately or risk losing them. No exceptions, no flexibility, no consideration for project timelines. Now, I wasn't one to take a ton of time off during the year, mostly because every time I tried, something urgent would come up and I'd get guilted into postponing. So by November, I had 10 full days of paid time off just sitting there. And according to HR's big red warning, I had about 6 weeks to use them. Naturally, I did what any burnt out, underappreciated employee would do. I opened the calendar and I booked myself off from December 18th to December 31st. 2 full weeks right before the new year, smack in the middle of the most chaotic time in our project cycle. A week later, my manager, let's call him Rob, came to me in a mild panic. Hey, I saw your PTO request. I was hoping we could shift that a little. December's going to be a critical time for the project and we really need all hands on deck. Yeah, I get that, but HR sent that PTO deadline. If I don't use those days, I lose them. And I've already worked through enough vacations this year. He looked uncomfortable, but couldn't argue with the logic. I even forwarded him the HR email with the subject line, using my days as required, smiley face. He escalated it to HR, of course. And what was HR's reply? Well, we understand it may be inconvenient, but our PTO policy is final. Managers are responsible for planning around employee availability. That reply felt like Christmas came early. So I prepped my team as best I could, left detailed notes, and on December 18th, I logged out, stress-free. While they were scrambling to hit deadlines, dealing with last-minute client requests, and working late, I was sipping hot chocolate, watching Netflix, and actually enjoying my holiday season for once. When I came back in January, the project had been delivered, but barely. The team was exhausted, mistakes had been made, and the post-mortem meeting was basically 45 minutes of finger-pointing. But no one dared say a word to me. After all, I was just following HR's rules. Moral of the story, if a company insists you follow policy to the letter, don't feel bad when you do, even if it means watching the ship catch fire from your cozy vacation cabin. Again, with this story, I'm just left confused. Like, why do companies follow policy to the letter, as OP has just said, when it's just the wrong thing to do? I feel like this is probably a thing in bigger companies, and the bigger the company gets, the more this sort of thing probably happens, where people just start to lose their common sense, and they're sort of just jumping through loopholes because they have departments that aren't really in contact with each other, and there are specific rules throughout the company, etc., etc., and it's almost sort of like formulaic in a way in which these things happen, rather than somebody actually thinking to themselves, is this sensible? No, so let's not do it. Whereas when you have like a smaller company and people are more sort of aligned, to use a buzzword, and actually aligned as in like they're working close together and they're thinking, okay, well, we've got this big project at this moment. Let's not take holiday before it. Let's take it afterwards. And who cares about the fact that, yeah, maybe I'll take 40 days of holiday one year and then 20 the next, because actually it makes sense. This sort of stuff doesn't happen. And ultimately the client's happier. Strange though. I don't know why you would ever give a deadline of you have to take PTO before this period either. Like, this is often a period where things need to sort of get done before the end of the year. Then everyone takes their vacation from like the 23rd or even the 24th, later than that. Not like the 18th when you need these sort of things to be wrapped up before Christmas. Now for our penultimate malicious compliance. Smokers get more breaks? Well, hold my beer then. This goes back about 10 years ago. I worked for a large telecommunications company as a call center supervisor. Most of my peers were smokers, and with the way schedules were set up, there were large chunks of the day where only 2 or 3 of us were on at the same time. Our manager insisted one of us always be visible on the call center floor while also performing our regular duties, performance reviews, call monitoring, escalations, and weekly one-on-ones with our team. I also had the largest team with consistently over 20 reporting to me. All this to set the stage. I noticed that I seemed to be the only supervisor actually doing my time being visible, but every time I tried to carve out an hour or two for the rest of my job, they were always out smoking. It got to the point that I was working after hours just to stay caught up. I brought it up to my manager, thinking she would discreetly monitor it. She didn't. Instead, in a supervisor meeting, she announced to the entire group that she knows we have a busy job and sometimes it seems imbalanced, understatement, but that really the smokers were just taking their lunch hour in short smoke break intervals instead, so it all worked out in the end. Cool. The next day, I came to work with a pack of cigarettes in my bag ready to go. The second I saw one of my peers going out to smoke, I went out with them, timing the breaks, lit cigarette in my hand the entire time. It was a revolving door. They were going out to smoke almost more than once an hour, and usually out there for a solid 20 minutes each time. By the end of the first day doing this, I had timed one supervisor at nearly 2 hours worth of smoking breaks. I well exceeded my own lunch hour, so I started doing it every day. I packed small snacks to munch while outside instead of taking my entire lunch. One day, my manager saw me heading out and seemed surprised. I just shrugged and said, yeah, I've decided to start smoking. She couldn't say anything because if she timed mine, she would have to time theirs as well. That's so good. Imagine that, just being like, you know what, it's kind of getting a bit annoying that the smokers in our group, my colleague, are getting that much free time outside. I'm just going to start smoking myself. This went on for roughly a month before she announces to our management team that we would be required to start coordinating breaks among the team to make sure we had coverage. I gained not only the well-earned smugness from ruining things for all my lazy peers, but also a bit of relief from constantly floor walking. I mean, there we go. Ultimately, you have, in a way, I know it's a joke, but committed to a very unhealthy habit to get more time off. And you could argue that on the one hand, yeah, you're smoking now. I know you're not, but say you actually were like, you know what, I'm actually going to become a smoker, so I get more time off. You're smoking, but you're also working less. I don't know. Is it worth it? No, but genuinely, it is one of those things where non-smokers get punished for being healthier. How is that right? I don't really know. Now, this is controversial. Arguably, smoking breaks shouldn't be a thing at all. Now, that is controversial, and that seems pretty kind of right wing. But I don't know, do you, if you're a gambling addict, get gambling breaks? Or if you're an alcoholic, get alcohol breaks? No, there's my point. Somebody said in the comments, I believe there are companies in Japan that give their non-smoking employees a couple of extra days off throughout the year to make up for the difference in time that smokers end up having from their smoke breaks. That is fair, and that's obviously what should happen. I'm not saying in a practical sense that smoking or smoke breaks shouldn't exist, but you shouldn't get punished for not taking those breaks, is the point. And ultimately, you are working more hours if you're not taking consistent smoke breaks. That's just a fact, and those people need to be compensated. And now for our final malicious compliance post of this episode. You want me to stop logging bugs? Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. This happened a couple of years ago when I was working as a QA analyst for a mid-sized software development company. I thought that some of you might enjoy it. I was part of a Scrum team working on a new feature for a large enterprise client. Our team was made up of the usual suspects: devs, a Scrum master, a product owner, and myself as the sole QA. Now, I'm a pretty thorough tester. I take pride in not just finding bugs, but documenting them clearly with steps to reproduce, screenshots, logs, you name it. Some devs loved me for it, others not so much. One dev in particular, Mike, really hated having bugs logged against his code. He had this passive-aggressive attitude where any issue I found was user error or not a bug. The guy had a serious ego problem and believed his code was flawless. We were getting close to a deadline and I was logging a lot of issues. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to warrant attention. Some were cosmetic, others were functional, but all were valid. Mike didn't like that I was slowing things down. During a sprint planning meeting, Mike went on a mini rant about how the QA was bogging the team down with unnecessary bugs and how we shouldn't waste time logging minor issues that don't block functionality. Surprisingly, the product owner, who was also feeling the deadline pressure, sided with him. The decision was made. From now on, only log critical/blocker issues. Everything else can be reported informally or ignored. I clarified. So, you want me to stop logging non-blocking bugs, even if they're reproducible? Yep, exactly. Let's focus on shipping. Okay, you got it, boss. For the next 2 sprints, I only logged blockers, like the app crashes or data corruption level stuff. Everything else, I kept to myself. No documentation, no Jira tickets, nada. The release went live and all heck broke loose. Users were finding buttons overlapping on mobile, broken tooltips, form validation failures, inconsistent date formats, slow load times on certain views. None of it was technically blocking, but it made the experience feel amateurish. Cue a very uncomfortable post-mortem with the client. The product owner asked why none of these issues were found during QA. I just smiled and said, well, they were found, but per your instruction, I didn't log them. Silence. Mike tried to chime in, but the damage was done. Upper management got wind of the fiasco and mandated that all issues, regardless of severity, must be logged going forward. Mike was moved to a different team shortly after. Not just because of this, but it didn't help. And I got an apology and a thank you from the product owner. Okay, so you were literally being told not to do your job. That is just ridiculous. I'm sorry. If you're Mike, surely you just need to lose the ego and be like, you know what? Yeah, these bugs are important to me. I want to be proud of the code that I put out as well and not feel like, okay, I've put it out. Somebody has said to me that it's fine when actually in reality I've told them not to tell me things that are wrong with it. I don't know, it's the sort of person that Mike is, but I'm thinking like if I was in that position, yeah, I'm sure it is annoying if somebody's telling you there's a bug here, there's a bug here, there's a bug here, but do you not want to hear about those bugs so that you can be proud of what you eventually do put out, knowing that it's error-free? Who wants to put out something that just doesn't work like this? I mean, this is just really embarrassing. You put out a product, there are very basic problems. Like if you have buttons overlapping on mobile, that just looks terrible. And that is an immediate, for me, I'm not using that anymore. Simple as that. Do you really want to not know about that before you put that product out? I mean, that's just insane. The one thing I would say is, did you get that request to stop the logging in writing? Because you need to be able to, well, I don't know, your PO sort of, actually, no, I don't know. The product owner has said it's fine. But I'm just like, in the future, maybe something may have happened where Mike had gone, well, I never said that. Where are the bugs? You didn't find them. That's on you, just to cover your back. But yeah, ultimately, absolutely fine. You did well. It's just like, again, I do sometimes feel very grateful for not having to work in a place like this where you're not even allowed to do your job properly because of some idiot that says, can you just not do it? That would just really annoy me. But yeah, there we go. My longtime boss betrayed me and screwed me over money he owed me. So I made sure he lost something worth 30 times more that he dreamed about his whole life. Where to begin? Huh? I suppose I should get back to when this whole sleigh ride began. I am an educated computer tech that had the misfortune of graduating right on the cusp of the 2008 financial crisis. Before, it was considered to be a vocation of the future. Various businesses came to our school, introducing themselves, offering scholarships for college if we signed an agreement to come and work for them after we graduated as well. But after the crash, those promises were the first thing they cut. As a result of that, I couldn't afford college, which meant I had to find work, which was easier said than done. My late and mid-20s were a roller coaster of dead-end jobs where I worked, finally saved up some money, got fired as a redundancy, and had to spend those savings for living expenses while looking for my next trashy job. Years went by, tech went on, and I couldn't afford classes to keep up with it. So, in my late 20s, I snapped. I'd had enough. I needed a career change. I decided to follow in my late father's footsteps and become a welder. It's as if fate intervened. A week before I made the inquiry about changing careers, a state-sponsored program came out that let me become one for free. After completing the welding courses, I was quickly offered a job as a field welder. We're literally talking about a matter of days here, a refreshing change of pace from before where it took months or more. This is where the subject of our story comes in. I'll call him Rat Boss. Now, Rat Boss ran a small field welding business with half a dozen man crew, traveling all over Europe doing field welding. He said he'd take me in, show me the ropes, teach me real welding, none of that schoolyard horse trash. And let me tell you, the first 6 years were amazing. Yeah, there was hard work, dawn till dusk, 7 days a week, sometimes gone from home for over a month, but the travels, the adventure, and the camaraderie. We were complete strangers to each other at the start, but we became like brothers, sticking together through thick and thin. Thinking back on it, I miss those days, even if they are behind me. And Rat Boss was, back at that time, the kind of boss that puts all other bosses to shame. I remember that one time where he took out a loan with a large interest just so that he could pay us our wages because he had an emergency expense that drained his bank account 2 weeks before a customer was due payment. He rather went into debt to pay us on time rather than ask if we could hang in there for a couple of weeks. But everything changed by year 7. At that time, most of the core crew had left, missing their families too much to keep doing it. So did Rat Boss. He set me up as a foreman while he found work himself back home, and he sent people he interviewed over my way as I needed them. It didn't start off so bad at first. Several jobs were done successfully, but the people that worked with me, it just wasn't the same. They were all short-term workers, there to make a quick buck, settle some debts, or gain some XP to find better paid work back at home. But then the pandemic struck, and I had to sit it out. It wasn't a big deal for me since I was used to having cash reserves for rainy days from my teen years. But what came after is where things started to seriously go wrong. Nobody decent wanted to work abroad anymore. So the people that came to work with me were those that Rat Boss might have proverbially fished out of the sewers. Drunkards, thieves, drug addicts, destitutes, the kinds with nothing to lose and no will to do a good job. It all went downhill rather quickly. As the foreman, I made sure the job got done regardless and that the work was signed off, so the bill would get sent and wages paid. But there were constant incidents outside of work, incidents unique to the demographic that worked with me. To top it all off, wages started coming late, travel costs weren't being refunded, and Rat Boss started doing some creative accounting when it came to the differences between everyone's nets and gross wages. It all came to a boiling point when I received a phone call at 3 a.m. on the night I was supposed to drive the boys back home in the morning. The customer called. One of the boys had been arrested for drunken disorderly. He didn't have ID on him, only the workplace identity card, so they phoned our customer in the middle of the night to help identify the foreman of that animal. So, yeah, I got called to pick him up. I ate a lot of trash that day. When I came back home, I had a good long sit down with Rat Boss. I told him I was done with that BS and that it was time to settle accounts. He sort of half-heartedly apologized. He also admitted he was having problems with his wife, who co-ran the business, and she was fighting with him over how the money was being spent. At that point, he owed me around a year's worth of travel expenses, and if you take into account that I've travelled at least 2,000 miles monthly, that's a substantial amount of money. He apologetically asked me to wait a bit on that money, as his wife is blocking him on any major expenditures. He also asked me to stay on, just for a few months, on minimum wage, just until he can put a decent crew together. The idiot that I was accepted this proposal. There was no reason not to trust him. After all, we'd known each other for almost 7 years at the time. I didn't think it was unreasonable to give him time to fix this, but I did have one condition. I needed half the money he owed me by the end of September because I'm having some work done on my house. He said that shouldn't be a problem this far in advance. I said, okay, we have a deal. But I remained suspicious. A couple of months went by. I worked for Rat Boss locally on minimum wage, except the problem is that even that wage came in late. My hackles were raised. I was concerned that I would have to postpone work on my house, work for which craftsmen are so hard to come by. You have to pay a deposit to prove you're serious about needing that work done. In the beginning of September, on the month his partial debt repayment was due, I confronted Rat Boss again. He assured me that paying half what he owed me for travel costs wouldn't be a problem, and that he's got the cash ready. As we parted way and I went for home, he gave me the fakest smile I've ever seen in my life. I stared him down. I gave him this kind of look that even an idiot would recognize as having "I'm not fooling around anymore" written all over it. Rat Boss lost that fake smile of his almost immediately. I said goodbye, got in my car, and I drove home. That weekend, Rat Boss sent me a message about how he's got a crew lined up and that he's going abroad to talk with a potential customer to get his foot back in the fieldwork door. Alarm bells started instantly ringing. He's going to avoid me for the date he was due to pay half his debt. He's going to screw me over. He was going to screw me over. Idiot. After everything we've been through together. At that point, I decided if the money doesn't come in on the due date, a 30-day resignation notice is going to be waiting for him when he gets back, filed on the exact day he was supposed to pay. But the thing is, when something has you this riled up, such as Rat Boss's probable betrayal, you kind of have a hard time focusing at work. So I slipped on a ramp. I didn't just sprain my ankle or tear a ligament, I downright destroyed it about a week before his debt payment was due. We're talking about emergency surgery here, 2 weeks minimum at the hospital, and being unable to put proper weight on that foot for 6 months. Wow, what did you do? Anyway, what do you guys think happened to the money he promised to pay me? It didn't come. Big surprise. Not only that, even the wage didn't get wired that month. And it gets even worse. While I was in the hospital, heavily medicated, the work got done on my house. My mother, who had authorization to my accounts in cases of emergency, used my savings to pay for the work on my house instead of cancelling, which means I had very little money left. She told me not to worry, I'll still get paid sick leave. I wasn't so sure. The thing about sick leave in my country is, in case of a work-related injury and a recovery period longer than a month, the employer is only required to pay the first month of sick leave. The rest is funded by the government, whereas the employer only pays for social security and taxes. Then the government wires the sick leave money to him for him to forward it to me, which of course didn't happen. I didn't receive a single cent from him. So here I was, broken, crippled, bedridden and unable to work. And it gets worse. I ran out of money just as I had the last installment of an outstanding debt to pay. Banks were calling me weekly. I had to cash in an investment to pay it off and to subsist while I recovered. An investment that would have yielded me a modest amount of passive income for the rest of my life. So, I was resigned for revenge. He lied to me, hid from me, failed to pay me what I was owed, stole from me, and pocketed money that was meant for me by the government. He will cook in the fires of hell for what he's done. So then, let's get into the revenge. But quickly, before I tell you what I did to him, just a little bit of background about Rat Boss. He lives in a small apartment in our capital city, along with his wife and 2 children. The apartment is extremely small, but he did have a dream. He bought a plot of land where he was building a large house, so big in fact that a single one of the rooms is going to be bigger than his whole previous apartment. Over the course of those 7 years, he slowly built it up, brick by brick, and he was almost done. When we still talked, he told me that he was at most 6 months away from moving in. The thing about me being his foreman is that it involves a lot of paperwork. Every decision, every purchase, every dirty little secret hidden away in the numbers, and I had it all. It was simply a matter of forwarding it all to the appropriate authorities, and as soon as I was able to walk, well, I wouldn't really say walk, more like drag my recovering foot behind the other one while under the influence of hardcore painkillers, I went out to turn him in to every government agency that had a shot at getting to him. The biggest hit came at the Labour Inspectorate. As the caseworker rummaged through the evidence I presented her, she mumbled to herself, wide-eyed, something along the lines of, "My God, he broke half the labour laws in our country." The aftermath. I live in what could be considered a second world country. Our government is slow and inefficient, but it does act when prompted. And when it did act on Rat Boss, his fall was like being hit in the face by the same meteor that killed the dinosaurs. His accounts were frozen, he was barred from travelling abroad, his business licenses were suspended, and he was required to dismiss all of his current employees with severance, money which he didn't have. He filed for bankruptcy soon after. He was required to sell the house he dreamed about for his entire life to settle the fines. He's stuck now, like I was, even worse maybe. He's trapped in that sardine can of his for an apartment, unable to work, unable to support his family, unable to pay the bills until the legal proceedings from the government finish. For what he did to me, I was able to stay afloat. But for what I did to him, he is done. Broken. Reduced to utter destitution. He called me when the government's gavel hit his face. I'll spare you the exact dialogue that took place because this post is long enough already, but to sum it up, he yelled over the phone saying how could I do this to him and yelled curse words at me. In return, I called him out for lying to me about money after 7 years, leaving me to rot in a hospital penniless, and I called him a rat that betrayed his friend and to never call me again as we are now in a legal dispute and he should forward all communication through the case office of the Labour Inspectorate. And then I hung up. I made a claim on his bankruptcy proceedings. By the time he paid all the fines, all I was able to claim from him was a single month's worth of sick leave. No travel costs, no nothing else, but it's okay, I can live with that as long as he got 10 times over the grievance he inflicted on me. No eye for an eye, no tooth for a tooth, the whole face for an eye, the whole head for a tooth. I stand, both literally and figuratively, but Rat Boss is deep in the dirt. When he used to dream about his big house, now he dreams about how he will someday, maybe, just maybe, be able to crawl all the way up to rock bottom to start all over again. And there we go. That is the end of that story. OP has added a little addendum on the end. Just a few final words saying, if you've read this far, thank you. I found it unusually easy to spell out a significant part of my life story to complete strangers, which took me all afternoon to put down into writing. Maybe because this story ended 2 years ago and my anger and resentment has long since subsided. I do not claim any moral high ground here. And if you call my story a clash of two villains where I emerged on top, that's okay, as long as you acknowledge that the proverbial gutter is full of men that walked away as they said they were the better man. Okay, and there we go. That is it for the first story of this episode. A great one. I don't know. It's great revenge, it really is. And it's fantastic that you destroyed his life more than he destroyed yours. And I completely don't sort of I'm not really on board with what you said at the end there. Like, I don't see you as a villain at all. And I sort of, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, an eye for an eye is one thing. How about a face for an eye? Like, this guy did you so badly. Let's get him back tenfold, 30-fold. I completely get that. It's just a shame, in my opinion, that you didn't get all your money you were owed. Like, I can't imagine the stress of having that physical pain, being in hospital, but then also like the mental turmoil of thinking, I don't know where I'm going to get any money from. I can't even afford to be in this hospital right now. Again, not entirely sure what country this is happening in, but in more ways than one, you know you're not going to be working afterwards. And if you're not going to be getting sick pay or any sort of like payout or insurance or anything, then yeah, you are totally screwed. So I think what you did was you're well within your rights to do it. But OP does say below, he's doing all right. You know, he's got a house, a car, and no debt. Same can't really be said for Rat Boss. All right, now moving into our second story of this episode. Classmate got pranked by fake letter after screwing us over. This is a very old revenge from when I was a teenager in the 90s. There were only a few PC gamers around at the time, and without internet, it was hard to get hold of new games. Me and a friend bought games from abroad via airmail because local stores didn't sell many, but these weren't cheap. We'd trade them with each other and would copy the copy protection, which was often included, so this made it semi-affordable for us. A new kid joined our class, however, and his uncle had tons and tons of games that we didn't have. We offered to trade games with him and gave him our original copies for him to copy, and in return we got corrupted floppies. Yes, this was the 90s. Missing copy protection, etc. And after a few months of this, we received not a single working game, while he had received all of our games. The Settlers, Doom 2, Monkey Island games, etc. Wow, those are some throwback titles. And some he returned in less than nice condition. We had enough, and we wanted to get revenge, but we didn't know how. Now, the 90s were known for the many AIDS campaigns after Freddie Mercury died of AIDS in 1991. I was a huge fan of Queen, and this new friend would often mock me for liking a gay singer. He came from a very conservative family, and his mother was quite Catholic, and this is what gave us an idea when we had to attend an AIDS event organised by a certain foundation with our class. At the end, we were given flyers about AIDS, homosexuality, etc., and free condoms with the logo of the AIDS Foundation were up for grabs. We each grabbed a few for reasons you'll soon see below. Me and my friend were one of the very few with a computer and inkjet printer at home, so we got this idea to screw this guy over. We created a fake letter addressed to our friend, pretending we were the AIDS Foundation, copying the logo and everything to make it look as authentic as possible. It went something like this. Dear first name, thank you for your letter. We understand it's difficult being open about being homosexual, and you have many questions after the event you attended with your class. Please find enclosed a flyer which should answer many of your questions, as well as some condoms. Please practice safe sex at all times. We enclosed all the flyers we gotten at the event, as well as the condoms, and mailed it to Mr. Last Name to guarantee that his father would open the letter first. We had no idea the trash storm this would create. We knew with him being homophobic this would be great revenge, but apparently his mother had been in tears, screaming. His father angry, and he was grounded for weeks with his parents convinced he was gay. In the end, he figured we had something to do with it because we'd been carefully fishing to see if our prank had succeeded. But at first, he thought the letter was authentic, and we had contacted the foundation in his name. When we finally confessed we'd faked it all, we had a nice trip to the principal to explain why we'd done this with his parents present. Oh god. It's still the best revenge I ever took in my life, even though it was 30 years ago. I mean, that is truly phenomenal. I think it's just a big shame though that you got caught. Although I put myself in your guys' situations, and I think I also would have been caught. I don't think I'm sort of, I don't know the word, humble enough, maybe, to never say anything, never fish for information. Like, I can imagine this kid walking into school. You can tell, look on his face, he's not happy. Would you just have a little word and say, well, I know I would. I'd be like, hey man, everything all right? What's going on? He might say, he might not. I might just then say, well, you know, how are your parents doing? got any letters in the post recently? Something like that. I just feel like I would, I don't know, when I would think of something as clever as this and put the work in like you guys did, I would sort of want the other person to know it's me. However, that clearly wasn't the smartest thing to do, because then you had to sit in a meeting with the principal and his parents. I mean, that is brutal. Although, to be fair, you didn't really do anything wrong. Well, maybe you did, but, it's not that bad. They can't exactly expel you for writing a letter, can they? Acting as somebody else. I don't know. Hopefully a principal was a good person and thought it was really funny, because it was. I, a 21-year-old woman, suspect that I might be my boyfriend, who is 29, of 2 years' side chick. Some details. Tim and I have been together for 2 years. We're both foreigners living in Europe. Names have been changed. Tim is a very private person in general, and so maybe some of the strangeness stems from that. In order to explain everything, I think I have to start at the very beginning. Tim and I met at an event for native English speakers after each of us having lived here for a year. We hit it off immediately. Later that week, we went to a pub crawl with other people from the event and hooked up. Only a few days later, we decided to meet up again, but when trying to decide if it would be at my place or his, he told me it has to be mine, and he'll explain why later. For the record, I do not live in an ideal situation to be having people, much less men, over, and he was completely aware of the situation. He came over and told me that he is still living with his ex-girlfriend of about 3 months. He had his own room and everything, but because he'd prepaid for 6 months of rent to lend us some money, he was staying there. Okay, so yeah, I know this is weird, but who am I to judge? He says they're definitely broken up and I'm just sleeping with the guy right now, so whatever. A few weeks go by and we decide to start dating exclusively and officially. He says he's just living with his ex, who will name Stephanie, temporarily for another 3 months, and then he'll find another place. Alright, so it's a weird situation, but I trust him and he'll leave in 3 months. He complains about having to live with her and says it's uncomfortable. He also told me why they broke up, which was because he caught her cheating on him with her ex at a party. So I'm not worried about them getting back together. I'm not 100% comfortable with the situation, but it's manageable. A few months pass and Tim doesn't move out. He says he's now got his own little apartment in the same house, but that it's so much better for him to stay there because he doesn't have to buy any furniture and the rent is cheap. Remember, we're foreigners, so buying a ton of furniture that you're just going to have to sell when you leave is annoying. He eventually starts saying that he's going to bring me over there to show me that they're living separately and whatnot. Long story short, that never happened. Every time I asked him to ask her about it, he'd say that she'd get upset and blah blah blah. Apparently, she was aware that he had a girlfriend, but didn't like it and wanted to get back together. Okay, well that, if nothing else so far, is a major red flag. If you're still living with your ex who wants to get back with you, you've got to move out, sorry. Anyway, after a year, he finally moved out. Not into his own place, but into the spare room at his buddy's house. I've been to this buddy's place before, only once though, and that has been the one and only time I've ever met one of his non-mutual friends, which is suspicious and strange on its own. I didn't help with the move, not for lack of trying, so no, I never saw him move his stuff there. Again, this was a temporary solution until he found a place of his own. Through various circumstances, the company being bought out, which led to job insecurity, him being extremely picky about finding an apartment, he is still yet to move into a place of his own. It's been about 10 months since he moved into his buddy's place, and I've yet to be there, even though I've asked many times. He always says yes, but then later says that he doesn't want to intrude or be a nuisance, etc. So essentially, I've never seen where he lives. Those things, along with me never having met his friends or Skyped with his family, are the underlying basis for my suspicion. But here is where the real stuff comes. I've got to say, by the way, all that stuff you've already said is very real. Like, something is definitely up here, even before we get into what I assume is going to be some concrete evidence. Last night, when I couldn't sleep, I went Facebook stalking. I searched for tag photos of Tim because I know he's weird about his Facebook and doesn't let tag pictures and posts show up on his wall. While going through the pictures, I found 3 pictures of him while he was visiting home over the summer. In each of the 3 pictures, there is a girl who is untagged sitting next to Tim. In 2 of the 3 pictures, his arm is around her, but the pictures are more posed and everyone's arms are around each other. 2 of the pictures are with friends, so I figured she's a friend from home, no big deal. In one picture though, they are with his sister and her husband and daughter, so a much more intimate picture. I do not know what Stephanie looks like, and she doesn't have Facebook. I can't find a picture of her through Googling, but I think this girl might be her. I don't know exactly why I think that, but I do. I did some more Google research and found Stephanie's grandmother's obituary. She died in January, so after Tim would have moved out of the house, and definitely after they should have been broken up. And yet, on the obituary, his name is listed next to Stephanie's as members of the family. I do know that he was close to the grandmother and that she left him stuff in her will, but still, I'm suspicious. If what I suspect is true, that means that he was able to hide this from me and her for 2 years, which is honestly just impressive. Right now though, I'm stuck. I don't want to bring up my relatively weak evidence with him until I can be sure, because he'll just have an excuse and I'll just accept it because I want to trust him and I want to be with him. I don't know how to get any more proof that the girl in the pictures is Stephanie, or how to know for sure one way or the other. So that's where I'd like advice. I'm not going to break up with him without knowing 100% because I honestly do love him, but I don't know how I can know 100%. Any advice or help is appreciated, although please be constructive. Guys, get in the comments down below. What would you do in this situation? How would you find out what's going on? There is actually a bit more information though that people have asked in the comments, so before you leave your comments, probably listen to this. Somebody asked how long and how often they see each other, and OP said, "We see each other at least twice a week, usually more, and he spends the night almost every weekend." Somebody replied to that saying, "That's an awful lot of time to spend away from home with a mistress. You mentioned that you are 2 hours away from their old apartment. What would allow him to be away for so long, so regularly? His job? Is he still that far away after moving out? Do you ever do anything in his area, or are you always in your area?" There's a lot of suggestive hooks for Reddit to latch onto here, but there's not a ton of meat within your post to come to an absolute conclusion. OP replied to this saying, "Their old apartment is only about 40 minutes drive away. However, because I don't have a car, I'd have to get there using public transport. And because it's in the middle of nowhere, it would take me about 2 hours to get there. The new apartment is only a 20-minute drive and much closer to where he works. He doesn't travel for work that often, and when he does, it's usually only for a night or two during the week. We mostly stick to doing things around where I am, because I live nearer to the city where there are actually things to do. Plus, like I said, getting to around where his friends are is an annoyance with public transport, and drinking and driving is a definite no-go." Now, somebody else said, or questioned, does he cancel plans a lot? Which is an interesting question, and OP replied, yeah, he cancels or comes late quite often. I don't know exactly where the new apartment is. I know the village it's in, but not the address. As I said before, I've never really met any of his friends, except for one of them one time. Okay, now there are 2 updates to come in this one, but yeah, as I said, guys, before we get into the first one, which was 6 weeks later, what do you think right now? For me, like, there's just too much going on here for him not to be doing something else at the same time. You can't be with someone for 10 months, have never been to their house, not even know their address, and have only ever met one of their friends. That's just not normal. Obviously, he's hiding stuff. I hope for your sake, OP, that it's something manageable. I don't think it's going to be, but yeah, that's the logical conclusion that I've come to. I'm like 99% sure that he's seeing somebody else, to be honest. Anyway, let's get into the first of 2 updates, as I said, 6 weeks later, and see what happened next. So, it's been a while. The story was developing, and I didn't want to update without knowing anything for sure. I never expected my post to get so much attention, and minus the few comments and PMs about being a tramp, I really appreciate all of the input everyone had, and I read every single comment and message. So first off, thank you to everyone. As many people suggested I do, I started with a conversation with Tim, where I made very, very clear how much the whole situation bothered me and why it was an issue for me. I tried to show him things from my perspective, and I tried to make him understand why I was so upset. He said he understood and apologized profusely. He cried and I cried. He said it was never his intention to hurt me and that he hadn't realized this had been such a large issue for me and that he'd been selfish about it. He said it was all going to change and that I would meet his friends and see where he's staying and get to Skype with his family, etc. He said I was the most important part of his life here and that he can't imagine his life without me in it. Ooh, interesting use of the word here. Not really, I suppose, because he may well still be with Stephanie, who's also in the same country, but maybe he's got something else at home as well, back in his homeland. I don't know. He said he wants to find an apartment for us to live together and that when I'm done with school, he wants to go back home together for good. There we go. He also told me that the girl in the pictures was an old family friend and that he was in the obituary because he still is close with the family and, quote, they still wish I was a part of the family. I decided to wait and see if he actually held up his end of things this time, and so we made up and all was well. What I didn't mention is that during my snooping phase before this conversation, I found the phone number to the landline where Stephanie lives and decided to give it a call asking for Tim. Stephanie's dad answered, and when I asked for Tim, he told me to call his cell phone because this was the landline, so not exactly helpful. Before you guys freak out about the dad thing, the house is like a duplex where the parents have their own half and Stephanie has her own half. This isn't uncommon in small villages here. Okay. A couple of days after Tim and I talked, he texted me asking if I'd called Stephanie's house asking for him. I decided not to lie and I admitted it. He said that she texted him saying that some girl with an accent had called the house asking for him and he immediately thought that it must have been me. I explained that I did it because I felt desperate for answers and just wanted to know what was going on. I also told him it was inconclusive. He got very upset and said I'd betrayed his trust and that I was acting like an insane person. He isn't exactly wrong about that part. But I explained that I felt forced to take such actions because I felt like I was never going to get any answers any other way. I apologized for the invasion of privacy and for bothering Stephanie and her family. After a few days, he calmed down and forgave me, saying, however, that this may push back me meeting his friends because he told them what happened and they were annoyed that I'd treat him that way. Oh, how convenient. I waited a few weeks to see if anything would change and unsurprisingly it did not. So this past weekend, he got very drunk one night and I was able to open his phone with his fingerprint while he was sleeping. I also just want to say one more thing. I don't think you are acting like an insane person by calling Stephanie's home and asking for Tim. That seems very logical. And if you do have doubts about something, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. I mean, when there are such obvious signs like there are in this one. Anyway, I found texts from Stephanie from the day before talking about what they should make for dinner that night. Oh my word. He told me he was out of town for work that night. I found lots of hearts and I love yous, and even him using the same pet names for her as he does for me. He told her he was going out of town this weekend for work and how much he'd miss her. I looked through the past few weeks of messages between them and saw that he had sent her quite a few of the same pictures that he'd sent me. He'd invited her to have a glass of wine with his buddy and his girlfriend. He picked her up from work multiple times, and there were lots of conversations about who was making dinner that night and what they should eat. I went back and looked for dates where I knew he'd slept over with me, and he'd always told her he was crashing at a friend's place or out of town for work or something along those lines. I also found a group text message titled Family that included Tim, his sister, his mum, and Stephanie. I looked at pictures of Stephanie that she'd sent him and was able to very obviously see that it was her in the pictures I found on Facebook. So, you guys were right. For the last 2 years, he's been living with her and seeing me on the side, all the while telling me how much he loves and admires me and how we're going to have a future together. I've been duped and taken advantage of, and I feel like a complete idiot because of it. I haven't talked to him yet, but when he comes over later in the week, I plan to tell him that I know everything. I also plan to tell him that he's a complete jerk. In my ideal conversation, he'd explain to me why he did this and what the F he was thinking during all of this, but I'm pretty sure those are just things that I'll never know or understand. Obviously, I'm going to break up with him. I also plan on contacting Stephanie with a letter telling my side of the story. I will give her dates that I know he spent the night with me so that she can cross-check them with dates that he didn't come home. I also plan to include a USB stick with pictures of Tim and me from the last 2 years and screenshots of some of our conversations from the last couple of months. I can't make her believe me, but I want to at least do my best for her. I feel like I owe it to her as a fellow human being to let her know what kind of man she's been with for the last 4 years. I'm open to absolutely any advice on my plan and on how to move forward from this. I won't lie, I feel so lost and so helpless right now. By breaking up with Tim, I'm losing a huge part of my life in this country, and I'm definitely going to be feeling this hole for a while. So, any help is appreciated. Thank you guys for listening, and sorry this is long as frick. I got carried away. No, it was all very good stuff, very tough to read, and yeah, I can't imagine being in this position. Anyway, 5 days later, we got the second update in this one. Again, I'd like to start off this post with a thank you to everyone who responded with constructive and helpful advice. I read every comment, reply, and PM. So, I took your advice, and I did not try to have a conversation with Tim. I realized that since he was so successfully able to manipulate me for 2 years, having one last conversation with him was bound to end up with me doubting my findings and perhaps my sanity. That is very good advice. I didn't think about that, but yeah. If he's been able to live this double life for 2 years without either of you clearly finding out until this point, well, most likely anyway, and not even having like a crazy amount of doubts. I mean, you did, but he duped you. Then yeah, who knows? He's probably very, very good at gaslighting and manipulating and making you think that what you think is wrong when actually it's 100% right. I wrote Stephanie a 3-page letter detailing the relationship that Tim and I have had over the past 2 years, making clear that it was serious and not just a fling. I mentioned dates and events that most people would not have known about, and I included the intricate lies and backstory that he told me. I included a list of dates from the last 2 months that he spent the night with me, and encouraged her to cross-check them with nights that he wasn't at home. I printed out a few photos of us as a quick visible proof, and I included the rest of the photos on a USB stick in the letter. The stick also contains screenshots of any particularly incriminating conversations that we've had over the last few months. I scanned postcards that he'd sent me from various vacations and included those as well. For safe measure, I also included a copy of the letter, in case the hard copy somehow went mysteriously missing. I gave her my email address and phone number, and I asked her to contact me if she wanted to. On Wednesday night, I had someone drive me to where she lives. If Tim was there, I would just have confirmations that he actually lives there and we'd leave. If he wasn't there, I'd ring the doorbell and hand her the letter personally. We drove the 45 kilometers, and Tim was sitting there in the living room on his laptop. It was obvious he lived there. She was nowhere to be seen. His and her names were on the mailbox. I called to see if he'd pick up, and he ignored the call. We headed back home. On Thursday morning, I mailed the letter. I ensured that it was registered post. In order to receive the letter, she'd have to show her ID and sign for it. On Friday, the letter arrived. She wasn't home, so she received a notification to go pick the letter up at the post office. On Saturday morning, she picked it up, and I got an email of the receipt with her signature on it. Throughout all of this, I conversed normally with Tim and made excuses as to why he couldn't come over during the week, so as to not tip him off to anything. He stopped talking to me about 20 minutes after she picked up the letter Saturday morning, and I've not heard from him since. He has, however, unfriended me and my family on Facebook. I've not heard from Stephanie either. So, now it's really over. I hope with my whole heart that he wasn't able to lie and manipulate his way out of the situation with her, but I'll probably never know. I don't expect to hear from him again. I feel very lonely, taken advantage of, and beaten down. I'm going to do my best to try and come out of this situation without trust issues and without being cynical and jaded. I'm seeking therapy to make sure I don't slip into depression. For now, I need to find ways to distract myself and fill up any free time. Thanks again for all your help, Reddit. This really sucks, but I'll get through it and hopefully be a stronger person for it. Okay, and there we go. Ridiculous, really. This was actually posted 10 years ago at the time of recording. So I hope that whatever OP is doing in her life is better than this. I hope like she's been able to come out the other side of this and yeah, find someone else or just have a nice life on her own, whatever. This is brutal. I just don't get people like this guy, Tim, who do this. Where's the satisfaction? What? How logistically does this work? Because I can't imagine like trying to think what I've told another person, what they've told me, what I've told someone else, what they've told me, sending the same pictures to 2 different girls, but like on WhatsApp or whatever. Like logistically, it's an absolute nightmare. So I actually commend Tim in many ways for being able to keep up that act for so long and not making any obvious slip-ups. Like, you know, if you were having like a conversation with one of them, what if you just said the other one's name? So surely you would do that in like a moment of where you're not really thinking about it. I don't know. I don't know how you do that. Secondly, as I said, like where's the enjoyment? Is it not just much more enjoyable to either be with one person forever, like, well, not forever, you know what I mean? Like, you know, properly, if you're that way inclined, or if you're not into that, then openly be with other people and not have to lie about it. Maybe it's the lying that he gets enjoyment from. It must be the deceit, because there are people out there that would be very open to you seeing other people. Maybe that just doesn't excite Tim. Who knows? If you know more than me, or if you've done something like Tim's done, or had it been done to you, get in the comments down below and let me know, was it enjoyable or was it actually quite sad? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I set up numerous fake dates for my cheating boyfriend. 8 years ago, I entered a relationship with someone who was almost too good to be true. He listened to everything I had to say. We had so much in common. I felt finally understood and really seen by someone as who I really am. I opened up to him more than I intended to, way too soon. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. Now I know that what he did to me back then was love bombing. Some examples of his techniques. The second month of dating, he took me to an uninhabited island with his small boat, set up a gorgeous lunch he prepared at home, served limoncello, we went diving, and he found a giant shell and gave it to me as a token of his love. Shortly thereafter, he took me to his childhood home, showed me pictures of his parents who were deceased, and gave me his old toy he claimed was his fondest childhood memory. I was sure he was the one. I might be in the wrong here, guys, but that sounds really nice to me. I know that love bombing is a real thing, and people that love bomb do stuff like this, but are you allowed to do this and not be a love bomber if you do really love someone? Surely you are. Anyway, however, soon things started to change. At first, it was the little things. He'd make a cynical comment here and there about the way I looked or something I said, and that made me feel very insecure. He'd flirt with other women in front of me to make me jealous. I'd cry and he'd apologize and temporarily revert to his old romantic loving self, but his outbursts became worse and worse, and the amount of pleading with him and convincing him of my love was growing each time. I felt exhausted and drained by the constant need to prove my love for him just to earn a little bit of affection that he initially showed me. I once got out of the shower and caught him browsing an online dating site. He said he made sure that I saw what he was checking out to see if I get jealous and controlling again. I didn't believe him. He was actually very bad with computers, and early on in the relationship, he once called me on the phone and asked for my help with setting up an online account for playing chess. I tried to guide him through the process of setting up a username and password at this particular site, which was somewhat more complicated than these things usually are, and he grew impatient and just told me the username and password he wanted to use. I remembered that, and I tried this username and password on the dating site he visited. I immediately got into his profile, and what I saw broke me. Not only was he chatting up other women, but it was clear from some of the conversations that he had met other women and had sex with them. Some of the conversations contained intimate information about me and what he was dissatisfied about with me. What I read hurt so much that I cried on the floor like a little baby. By this point, I knew he wasn't perfect and that our relationship was far from perfect, but I was clinging on to that initial phase of our relationship, which made me feel the happiest I had been in my life. Now I had to deal with the fact that it was all fake. I cried for hours, and then something in me broke, and I decided to get even. I set up a fake online dating profile, the first of the many to come. I started chatting with him, and after a few days, he suggested meeting. I feigned hesitation, but he insisted. I reluctantly agreed to meet him in a large coffee house. I went there, half disguised, and I sat where I knew he wouldn't see me. I half hoped that he wouldn't come and that it was all just a bad dream. I called him 10 minutes before the meeting with the mystery woman to ask where he was and if we could meet. He said that he couldn't because he had an errand to run. My heart sank. So I actually called him 10 minutes before the meeting with the mystery woman to ask where he was and if we could meet. But he said that he couldn't because he had an errand to run. My heart sank. I kept my eyes glued to the door, and sure enough, there he was. He came in, sat, and waited. At first, I thought I was getting a panic attack because I was so distraught, but I managed to calm myself down. He first waited patiently, then started fidgeting and looking at every woman that came in. And then, as if by divine intervention, a woman came in who looked just as what I described myself online. He immediately came up to her and said something. She dismissed him, but he was persistent, at which point she got agitated with him and told him to leave her alone. He waited for another half an hour and then left. That afternoon, I sent him a message through the dating site that I was indeed the woman he spoke to, that I saw him, found him physically unattractive, but lacked the courage to discuss it in public, so I faked not knowing who he was. Oh my gosh. I apologized profusely and he said it was okay. No hard feelings. But I knew it wasn't okay. He was very self-aware and narcissistic. No way he was unbothered by that. So, I did it to him again. And again. And again. Sometimes he'd be stood up. Sometimes the woman would reschedule and then he'd be stood up. Sometimes she'd cancel at the last minute. At least 10 dates went south. I decided it was enough and that it was time to break up. I did it in public. I told him it was over because he was a cheating SOB. He denied everything and tried to gaslight me and spin the story as me being the jealous freak. I then looked at him and said, all those failed dates, all me. And I just let that sink in. He asked how, and I told him his password, and I left. A few months after the breakup, he wrote a lengthy email saying that what I did to him was ingenious, that it proved I was the love of his life, and that he completely lost the will for online dating because he both fears and hopes that every new woman is me. Wow. I never answered this or any other attempt he made to contact me, and he still makes such attempts even now, years later. What a story. I mean, this is just phenomenal. I don't know if online dating is that good. Some people really like it, some people don't. It's a controversial topic. I've had some good experiences and some bad experiences. Actually, not really that many bad experiences. Well, I suppose the entire question is, how does it affect society as a whole? But we're not going to get into that in this episode. The next one, maybe. But anyway, the point is, this guy is never going to go on an online dating app ever again in his life. He has been scarred in the most brilliant way possible. And he deserves it, by the way. Imagine that, like, you are on a date. Well, you're not on the date, but you think you're going to go on a date with somebody. They walk in. You're like, is that them? I'm not sure. It looks like them. You say to them, oh, are you here for a date with me? Like, Pauline, how are you? They go, don't know who that is, because they actually don't know who that is or who you are. They're just a random girl. And then later, you think that person has texted you saying, sorry, you were just so ugly in real life that I faked that I didn't know you. That is just so good. When that didn't even happen in the first place. Just phenomenal stuff. I've actually done that before, I will say, where I went on a date on like an app, and I went into this place and I wasn't quite sure if this girl was the person I was dating or not. Sometimes, same with guys, I'm sure, but some girls don't always look exactly the same as they do online, which is part of the problem with online dating, to be fair. It works both ways. You can look better or worse. You just don't know how someone actually physically looks in real life. Not that that's really important, okay? But it can be. But yeah, I actually said to this girl, are you Emily? And she was like, no. And I said, great. What a great story. I just said you look like the person I'm supposed to be dating. Then they walked in and I just dated both of them. And then I went home and just that has to be censored because it didn't happen. And also, I wish it did. You talk about commentary. You know, Reddit commentary like this. It's just top tier, isn't it? 3 more stories to come. Let's get into the second. I set my cheating ex-boyfriend up with a bisexual girl and ruined his relationship. Over the summer of 2010, I was engaged to my ex. I was young and dumb, as we've all been, I guess. I lived in Europe but visited the States every summer. My mum is from here. So my ex cheated on me all summer and took the girl to my house, telling her it was his aunt's house. I got back and I found out everything. He begged me to forgive him and take him back. Not a chance, buddy. So, we had this girl in our circle that was bi. She'd always had a crush on me, but he definitely had a crush on her. I proposed my plan to this girl. After telling her what he'd done to me over the summer, I said that it would be amazing if she got him to fall in love with her, then dump him out of nowhere. But she had something so much better in mind. So, this is as things unfold. She would console him over our breakup and tell him that things would get better. They got close and started to date. 6 months in, he told her he loved her. Such a tool. So, she played along. I had a key to his place, so me and her went over before he got back from work. He came home to us making out in his bed. He completely freaked out and started shouting insane things that only make sense in the mind of a deranged cheater. He said that I deceived him and some stuff like that. I'm laughing my butt off because, dude, you cheated on me while we were engaged. And she just stood there and said, I was never into you, you cheating frick. I wish recording these scenarios was more popular at the time because his face was priceless. I mean, this man cried. Anyway, he stopped hanging around our circle altogether. He recently sent me a friend request on Facebook 15 years later. The audacity is ungodly. I mean, this is just so malicious, but it's so good. So good. A friend request 15 years later, by the way, is absolutely crazy. Like, what are you hoping for there? Absolutely ridiculous. What's so good about this story is that, like, this girl was willing to sacrifice so much of her life just to help OP out. This is an insane sacrifice. Like, I don't know what was going on sexually, but 6 months in, surely you've had sex at that point. You just must have done. And she doesn't even like this guy. I mean, I don't know. I suppose you could because, like, maybe he's an attractive guy, whatever. And maybe, yeah, you're just like, well, I'll do it. The plot. Crazy stuff. I was never into you, you cheating F. So good. My ex cheated, so I made him think he was being stalked on campus. To this day, he has no idea it was me. When I say I don't do screaming matches or begging after being disrespected, I mean it. My ex was emotionally and verbally abusive for most of our relationship. Manipulative, cruel, gaslighty, the works. We were long distance at the time because he'd gone away for college and I was living in another state. And then, surprise, surprise, I found out he was cheating. That was the last straw for me. But I wasn't going to go out with a dramatic breakup. I wanted him haunted. So I spent months quietly collecting receipts. I paid attention to everything. The names of the girls he followed, locations he popped up at on SnapMap. He'd turned off his actual location for me, but the idiot forgot Snapchat. Bars and hangout spots around campus, mutuals, everything. I memorized names, I saved info, I was building a case file like a dang detective. And then came the fun part. I made a fake Instagram account posing as a frat guy from his school. Then I text myself from the account pretending to be some random dude saying, hey, I have proof your boyfriend's cheating on you. Of course, I was the one behind it all. The moment he saw it, he panicked, immediately told me to block the account and stop replying. He was going off. I acted confused and hurt the whole time. Oh, this is so good. Then I sent myself a long message from that fake account detailing everything. The name of the bar he always went to, the names of girls he followed, places I said I saw him at, stuff there's no way a stranger should have known. He genuinely thought he was being stalked and followed. He spiraled hard and ended up fully confessing to all the cheating and even went to campus police, convinced that someone was after him. Spoiler, nobody ever caught me. Nothing ever came of it. And now, he still tries to reach out to this day with long, dramatic apologies and regrets, and he still doesn't know that the random frat bro who exposed him was me the whole dang time. Again, unbelievable story. So clever and so good. So good. Like, if imagine receiving those messages, you'd be like, what is happening? I have to be being stalked. There's no way people can know this about me. The paranoia that you'd have walking around campus from that point onwards, or just in your life in general, I suppose. Awful. Absolutely awful. And you got away with it. Genuinely the perfect revenge. Again, so well deserved. Now for our final story of revenge. Doing small acts of revenge to chip away at my boyfriend's sister's ego. Word of warning, guys. I do apologize. This one doesn't include a cheater, but they're terrible nonetheless. So, my boyfriend's sister is a very nasty female dog of a young woman. She treats her mum like trash. yells at her and belittles her. She's honestly mean with everyone in the house, even her own boyfriend. She yells at him every day. Once, she also yelled at me, telling me that the bed I bought isn't mine and that I don't own it. Like, I freaking bought it, so it's mine? She fiddled with the bed screws, then I firmly asked her to stop, and then she went crazy. I also don't like her because she started a fight with her mum the second her mum came home from work. It was my 20th birthday that day, by the way. She's also irresponsible, lazy, and negligent. She gets so drunk when we all go out that she ends up fainting and vomiting all night long. Then my boyfriend and I have to sacrifice our entire time out to watch over her butt. She also can't keep a boyfriend longer than 5 months. That's the backstory, basically. I've thought of many ways to silently get back at her. Then, I came across a video on TikTok where you can remove boxed dye with vitamin C tablets, baking soda, etc. So, I took almost 10 small vitamin C tablets and I crushed them up finely. After that, I poured it into her shampoo along with some vinegar and salt. She'd been dyeing her hair black for years. Now, every time when she'd wash her hair, the dye would come out. I personally think it'll be super funny. Hopefully, it will work. Any recommendations to get more revenge on her where I won't get caught or suspected of anything? Okay, there we go. Not a cheating story as much, but I suppose it involves a boyfriend's sister and she can't keep hold of a boyfriend because who knows, maybe she might be a cheat as well. Wouldn't put it past her reading all this stuff. Ridiculous. But yeah, great revenge, and hopefully she just never has black hair again and never realizes why. In terms of recommendations, what do you think? Comment down below, guys. Let's end this episode here, but I want to hear your thoughts. What other stuff? Some clever stuff. We've seen some very clever stuff in this episode, and I think that, you know, hair dyeing is also a clever one, but yeah, what sort of clever ideas do you have, just in general, I suppose, doesn't have to be specific to this story, for revenge where you can't get caught? Like that stalker one. Like, you're never going to get caught doing that. Arguably, even like the online dating one, if you'd not said, you probably wouldn't have got caught because it could have been anybody, who knows. The bisexual girl cheating one, yeah, that's a pretty obvious one, but comment down below. What do you think? What would you do? And also, what do you think's better? Revenge where the person doesn't ever find out it's you and you just remain chilling, no suspicions, or revenge that's hard-hitting where they do know it's you and they know that you're the one that has been going out of their way to ruin their life. I don't know, I feel like the payoff is so good when they know it's you, but maybe it's more like calmly satisfying knowing that they're never ever going to know that you were involved. Boss accused me of bullying, so I requested punishment. Years ago, I worked in a semi-public sector job as part of a successful team helping make life easy for local businesses. Our team boss took a good job in the private sector, and a new boss was recruited from a decent organisation similar to ours in a different part of the country. She worked compressed hours, Monday to Thursday, and was off on Fridays. A month or two in, and although the new boss was quite particular about things being done her way and had upset a couple of my colleagues by criticising their work, I'd had no problems with her. We had a team meeting where the boss said that our performance wasn't good enough. We were arguably the best in the country though, and that she wanted to be more involved in what and how we did everything to ensure better quality, and so we should copy her into every client email so that she could comment as needed before we sent another reply. Although this seemed inefficient, nobody argued, and I just asked her if I should wait until Monday for her to comment on any client emails received on a Friday. I can't remember exactly what she said, but at the end of the meeting, she asked me to stay behind, and then told me in a heated tone that my question was, quote, bullying behaviour, that it was unprofessional to ask that question in front of the team, and said that my actions were the sort of thing that HR would see as grounds for dismissal and that I should be very careful in future. Talk about an overreaction. I told her I understood, and we returned to our desks, where I wrote up every single detail of the entire meeting and interaction and sent it to the head of HR, with the explanation that as bullying was very serious and may not be reported by the victim, I felt duty bound to report myself. I also laid it on pretty thick about being appalled by my unprofessional behaviour and the fact that my career was likely at risk, and I clearly had a desperate need for training and discipline to fix my dangerous ways. I also copied in my union rep. That is so good. Within a day, Me, my union rep, and my boss were with the head of HR, who, being a by-the-book professional, could find no indication of bullying or justification for my fears of being an unprofessional bully in need of re-education. I was actually asked to leave the meeting. My union rep stayed in, and I don't know what was said, but within 6 weeks, my boss was gone. And that same week, my weak and ineffective but likeable big boss called me in to thank me, as he'd wanted to get rid of her but hadn't known how. Unreal. Okay, this is actually brilliant. I got a little bit worried when OP said that you understood after your boss came over and said those ridiculous things to you after that meeting, but then very quickly I understood why you said that. Someone's commented, I love it when they hand me their rope, and yeah, that is kind of the thing, and it makes me think about something that I hear quite a lot, especially with employing people. You've got to be very careful who you employ, because once you've employed somebody, it can be extremely hard to get rid of them. And clearly that is what your big boss was referencing, saying thank you to you for giving him an opportunity to get rid of her. Supervisor told me to stop reminding him about an overdue task. So I stopped, and he missed the deadline. I work as a project coordinator. Basically, I just keep track of what everyone's supposed to be doing and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. My supervisor, James, is fine at pretending he's on top of stuff, but the dude forgets everything unless someone's reminding him. So I usually give him a heads up when things are due. Like last week I said, hey, just a reminder, that report's due Friday. He looks at me and goes, I don't need to be babysat. I know what's on my list. All right then, you got it. So I keep my mouth shut. No reminders, no check-ins. I let him be the expert. Friday comes, nothing. Monday morning, he's suddenly in panic mode because the director is asking where the heck the report is. He turns to me like, why didn't you remind me? I just said, well, you told me not to. Now he thanks me every time I send a reminder. I guess we're back to babysitting, but at least he asked nicely. Okay, a few interesting things in this story. Now, I've never worked in like a big company before, so I don't really know that a project coordinator whose job literally is just to coordinate was much of a thing. But it does seem like a glorified babysitter, and I would say that seems unnecessary, but then clearly it's not, because you have people like this that aren't capable of keeping up with the work they have to do. I mean, I would have thought that was like a quite important part of your role. Not just obviously doing the work itself, but also knowing what work you need to do and when. But I suppose a project coordinator, obviously that does more than just babysit, does make sense. But him then saying after this, not, oh, okay, I need to be more diligent with my deadlines and knowing what I've got to do for when. But actually, okay, look, you remind me in future. Is that not a bit poor? I don't know. It's different for me. You guys let me know in the comments down below. But if I forget a deadline, that's on me. And like, I've only got myself to blame. I don't understand really, but fair enough. Good malicious compliance. That is what I will definitely say. I think the term babysitting here is confusing me. I think that's the thing, because like the idea of a project coordinator, I completely understand. But the idea of somebody going over to someone and saying, hey, just reminding you, you've got a deadline on Monday, I don't really understand, because I think you should be able to do that. But yes, not babysitting, project coordination, of course, that makes a lot of sense. I'd quite like it, to be fair, if somebody kept on top of everything that I needed to do. I do struggle with that sometimes. I also struggle with waffling. Let's carry on. Now for our third malicious compliance story. I should cancel on my end? No problem. I booked accommodation 2 months in advance for St. Patrick's weekend in Dublin. It was a fairly ancient B&B, but for €115, it was a place to sleep and the cheapest option for the busiest weekend of the year in Dublin. It was one double bed for me and a buddy to share. It was pay on arrival. Now, 3 weeks before the stay, the accommodation manager messaged me on the app I booked the stay on, telling me there's a problem. I can no longer stay, and to cancel on my side immediately. No apology, let alone help offered by them. This was followed by multiple phone calls daily, along with text messages in a harassing nature saying I need to cancel now so I can get my money back. Once again, it was pay on arrival. I didn't answer the calls or messages telling me to cancel. Something about it felt off, so I checked the listing for the night I was supposed to stay, and it just so happens the accommodation had been listed again for double the price. Likely, the manager realised St. Patrick's weekend was a cash grab. Maybe not immediately, but at the property manager's request, I simply rang booking.com and told them I'd like to cancel my booking. The customer service rep asked why I was cancelling. I explained in detail all the above to her, and things took an unexpected turn for the property manager. Ultimately, the rep agreed the property was acting in an unfair manner, and the solution was that Booking.com would find me accommodation within 1 kilometre. Originally, they tried to get me to stay way outside of the city, but I wasn't having it, of where I intended to stay. The original property would then be liable to cover any difference in cost. Now, here's the good part. Finding accommodation 3 weeks before St. Patrick's Day in Dublin is about as difficult as trying to light a fire with flint and steel in the rain. Near impossible. Everything within a 1 kilometre range was booked out, except for a well-known 4-star hotel. The room alone cost €350 per night and had 2 double beds, a much bigger room, and was in a much nicer location. The customer rep had to get it cleared by her team lead, so I just sat on hold doing chores for 25 minutes. Eventually, they came back and said it was all signed off on, and they'll send me a special link. What a treat. I gladly accepted their compromise. This, in turn, meant the property owner that tried to force me to cancel on my end was now indebted €235, and we got a massive upgrade for the same price we originally had. I had to pay the $350 up front, and I had to keep receipts and show proof of payment to the booking partner after our stay, but I got my refund of €235 the following week. Very interesting here, because the whole point is, if these people cancelled on you, I think then they would have to sort of, either pay a fine or deal with potentially your complaints. This thing, to be fair, has happened to me multiple times in the past with Airbnbs, hotels, etc. when these places don't realize that the prices should really be inflated for events that are happening in the city or whatever that these places are in. Then they realize after you've already booked and they just bump the price up and they cancel on you. I mean, that has happened to me before, so I don't really know how they get away with that. But this is much better, where they can't cancel on you. And the fact that they have the audacity to ask you to cancel on them is just ridiculous, because that's the only way they'll get around it and then be able to bump the prices up. But yeah, very, very poor technique. Shouldn't be allowed at all, especially this close to the trip. But yeah, overall, getting punished for bad practice like this is exactly what I want to see. And it's also amazing that you guys got a great upgrade for free. You want me to be on time? Okay, down to the minute. The timekeeping system at my job runs on a 15-minute increment schedule. Basically, if you clock in during the first 7 minutes of the increment, it rounds you backwards to the start of that segment. If you're in the last 7 minutes, it rounds you forward to the end of the segment. For example, you clock out at 4:52, congrats, the system says you left at 4:45. Now, if you clock in and out multiple times a day, like for lunch, that's 4 punches and potentially up to 28 minutes lost or gained, depending on where you land in those increments. So sorry, if you clock out at 4:53, in effect, you've clocked out 15 minutes later than if you'd clocked out in reality a minute before. That's the dumbest system ever. Anyway, shortly after I started, I began getting flooded with emails about being short a few minutes on my timesheet, and I was told I had to submit PTO, even though I worked full 8-hour days, sometimes more. It didn't matter that I was physically at work. If the system said I was short, I had to burn time off. So I started paying attention, really close attention. Here's the twist. My employer doesn't pay overtime in cash, but they do give you 1.5 times time off if you earn it. So 1 hour of overtime is 1.5 hours of PTO. With some strategic clocking in and out, always landing on the helpful side of the 15-minute window, I've gotten good at squeezing out those 28 minutes extra a day. That adds up to 140 minutes, 2 hours and 20 minutes of overtime a week, which when covered at 1.5 times becomes 3.5 hours of paid time off every week, all for doing exactly what they asked, watching the clock very closely. Thanks for the free time off. Wow. Well, I said it during reading there, and I have to say it again. This is the dumbest system ever. Is your technology not capable of just putting these things in by the minute or even by the second? Like every 15 minutes? That just doesn't make any sense. If it's like automated technology, that makes no sense. So I imagine what you were doing here was staying for an extra minute, as in signing out that extra minute later to make it seem as if you had been there for actually another 7 minutes on top of that. So for example, if you clock out at 4:53, then it would say that you clocked out at 5. So in effect, you are working for another 7 minutes there. And you're not really you're not doing anything wrong here, because you are saying you clocked out at 4:53, and that is when you did clock out. It just says that you left at 5. So yeah, you're gaining 28 minutes per day of work that you haven't actually done. So in effect, 140 minutes of overtime a week. So you're getting 3.5 hours of paid time off every week for just logging out like a minute later. That's so dumb. So over the course of a year, 3.5 hours times 52 for 52 weeks is 7.5 days. So just by punching out a minute later 4 times a day, you're gaining an extra 7.5 days of annual leave per year. That's absolutely insane. I mean, listen, you guys put in the comments down below how much annual leave you get, how much vacation you get. But in the UK, it's pretty normal to get what, like 25-ish days, roughly. Maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more. So you're getting like 25% or 20% more annual leave just by using this silly technique. That's class. I wouldn't have made that Reddit post. I'm sorry. I just wouldn't have done, on the off chance that your boss sees that. You've got to keep that to yourself. That's an insane amount of time you're getting for free. Now for our 5th post. Take the chairs away from our work area. We're going to F this place up. I work for a major US airline for a long time and at several different airports. There's an area behind the baggage counter where the bags get sorted for their respective flights after they've been checked. We're on our feet most of the time, but we each have chairs at our workstations so we can sit and rest for a minute when there's a lull in bags coming down. Every few years, there'll be a hot trash new manager who's going to turn this airport around and make it the best performing one in the system, and they all seem to have the same idea. Take away the chairs so the agents are always standing at the belt. Now, the agents in this area are generally on the senior side, as it's indoors and out of the elements. We've done the job for a while. We know how to do the job efficiently, and we really do our best to avoid F-ups. But as long as human error is a factor, there will always be some. Taking our chairs does nothing but annoy us. Their BS excuse usually is framing it as a safety issue, a tripping hazard. So that's where we start. Smaller or oddly shaped bags get sent down in a plastic tub so they don't jam the belt. Maybe you've seen them. We take them off the belt and stack them up on the ground for someone to come by and collect. But not anymore. We let them pile up on the belt, making it a giant pain in the butt for the poor idiot collecting them. They're then complaining constantly to the manager. We say, sorry boss, they're a tripping hazard on the ground. Next, we start following the rules. Our employee handbook lays out very clearly what the company's expectations for us are in our job duties. We're only expected to pull 1 bag per minute and take bags out no later than 20 minutes before the flight departs. Maybe you've guessed already, but those expectations are nowhere near good enough to actually complete these tasks. So by the company's own rules, we were all going well beyond what was expected of us. So we start giving them the bare minimum, 1 bag per minute, 20 minutes prior. My manager was annoyed. He and the supervisors were throwing bags, and us being unionized, we documented and grieved every single time it happened. And the company a few days later had to pay out several thousand to agents for covered work. Delays across the board. 1,500 bags missed that day. The next morning, the chairs were back in their spots and we continued as normal. And afterwards, nobody would give that manager the time of day. A lot of passengers got screwed over that day, but we were working exactly to the rules our company had given us, so you can blame the airline and not the agents. The handbook was changed after a while, but only extending it to 35 minutes prior instead of 20. It's still 1 bag per minute the last time I looked. I was lucky enough to be a part of 3 of these events over the years, but this was the most satisfying. Now, this is one of those stories that I've seen a lot of times before, not necessarily just on malicious compliance. In fact, across the whole of Reddit for all the years I've been doing this, where be it entitled people or just people who are in some sort of position of power or something like this, they'll do one thing which really isn't necessary at all to potentially, in a non-human world, if you're just looking at like pure efficiency and numbers, may increase some metric by 0.01%, but in reality, it's just going to annoy people that are working for you. And that is going to have massive ramifications, as you've seen. It's like these people are clearly working so hard anyway, and they're very good at their jobs, and they know what they're doing. Why anger them for a potential tiny marginal gain? Also, surely you know that they are producing at a level that actually isn't asked of them, and they're going above and beyond what they've actually been set out to do in your rules, in your handbook. Like, it's ridiculous. I don't understand why managers, bosses, whatever, people don't go, okay, yeah, perhaps we could squeeze out a tiny, tiny little bit more of X by introducing this. But the human side, no. What's the point, first of all? And secondly, people are just going to get annoyed. I don't get it, but yeah, well done to you guys for sticking to the rules. Now for our final malicious compliance post of this episode. You want to review every client interaction? Perfect. Your inbox is about to blow up. I've been working at this small marketing agency for just over a year now. It's my first real job after college, and I've been thrilled to have actual clients and responsibilities. Well, I was thrilled until we got a new account manager, Debbie. Debbie came from one of those corporate mega agencies where apparently they micromanage the living daylights out of everyone. From day one, she had concerns about my communication style with clients. Mind you, I'd been praised by these same clients for being responsive and helpful. Last month, after I sent what I thought was a perfectly normal email to our biggest client about a small scheduling change, Debbie called an emergency meeting. From now on, I need to approve all client communications before they go out, she announced with that fake smile managers use when they're being unreasonable but pretending they're helping you. Everything. Emails, phone call notes, text messages, meeting agendas, send them to me first for review. When I pointed out that this would slow down our response times, she just waved her hand dismissively. It's about quality control. Better to be right than fast. Fine. You want all communications? You got it. I started that very afternoon. Every single thing. If a client asked what time a call was scheduled, I drafted an email response and sent it to Debbie, awaiting your approval on this time confirmation. If a client texted asking for a quick file, I'd screenshot it and email Debbie. Please approve my response to this text message. I even created a special folder in my drafts called Awaiting Debbie's Approval, and I set up an automated counter. By the end of day one, I sent her 17 approval requests, and by the end of week one, it was over 100. The best part, I stopped answering my phone when clients called. Instead, I'd let it go to voicemail. Then email Debbie. Client X called about Y. My proposed response is attached. Please approve. After about 2 weeks, Debbie was drowning. She'd fallen behind on approving my communications, which meant that clients weren't getting responses. They started escalating to her directly, which doubled her workload. The breaking point came when our biggest client emailed both of us complaining about delays. I responded to the client with, I've forwarded your concerns to Debbie for approval of my response. Once approved, I'll get back to you promptly. The next morning, Debbie stopped by my desk, looking exhausted. I think we need to adjust our approval process, she said, trying to maintain her corporate dignity. Moving forward, just use your judgment for routine communications. Only send me things that involve project scope, timeline changes, or budget discussions. Are you sure? I asked innocently. I have about 30 draft responses waiting for your review right now. She visibly cringed. That won't be necessary anymore. I've been happily sending emails without approval for 2 weeks now. Debbie barely makes eye contact in the hallway, and honestly, that's fine by me. The best part, my quarterly review is coming up, and all those approval emails are documented proof that I've been trying my absolute best to follow company protocol. Sometimes, malicious compliance is the best teacher. Now this is just micromanaging to the nth degree, and it's completely unnecessary. And yeah, Debbie's had her reward there for being pedantic and trying to get into the minutiae and sort of overmanage, control all her employees and make sure everything's 100% correct. Now this is something that I don't fully know with what I do. I've just got Steve-O who works alongside me on this channel. But I know from hearing other people that Letting other people do their jobs is the best thing you can do. Hiring people that are good at their jobs and then just saying, you know what, I trust you to do the job. I hired you for a reason. I'll leave you to it, and letting them get on with it is the most efficient way of doing things. Like, trying to micromanage not only stretches you massively, as you can see here. Debbie can't have been able to even do her own job well at all because of all this stuff, but also just annoys all your employees who you are micromanaging. So no point, but hopefully Debbie has learned her lesson now. I kind of doubt it, but you never know. Maybe she has. My neighbor blocked my driveway one too many times, so I had his car towed during his Tinder dates. For context, my neighbor is the type of guy who thinks rules are for other people. An arrogant 6-foot-something hunk in his mid-20s. Wow, is he talking about me? He constantly parks in front of my driveway, fully blocking it, despite multiple warnings, notes, and in-person, hey man, seriously, stop conversations. His excuse? I'm just here for a bit. A bit apparently means an eternity, 3 to 5 hours every dang time. Last week, I come home and surprise, he's there again, blocking my driveway with his crusty silver sedan. I see him through his window getting ready, cologne and everything. He's going out. I decide tonight's the night. So I do what I should have done weeks ago. I call a tow truck. No warnings, no notes, get it towed straight up. About 45 minutes later, I'm sitting on my porch drinking a beer when a random girl walks up the sidewalk, clearly dressed for a date. She knocks on his door, he comes out smiling, then sees his car is gone. She's confused. He's flipping out. He starts looking around like someone robbed him. I casually say, if you're looking for your car, it got towed. You were blocking my driveway again. He tries to argue, but the girl just says, wait, you parked in front of his driveway? He tries to explain, but she just says, wow, that's trashy, and walks off. I haven't seen him block my driveway since, and he never called another girl home after that. His confidence took a major hit. So ultimately, he blocked you, and then you blocked him. That's fair enough. And can I just say as well, shout out to this woman for knowing that despite the fact that she's going on a date with this guy, and maybe if they've met before, likes him, who knows if it's a first date or not, probably is given that she's gone to his house. Knowing that he was in the wrong and that you were in the right, and she clearly has the moral compass to say, you know what, I don't want to date this guy right now. I'm leaving. Honestly, you saved her so much time realizing that he's just a piece of trash. Talk about blocking. How about car blocking? Hurt my friend? Good luck with your education. Back in the before times, when the internet was still a new thing with lots of potential, I was enrolled at my local junior college. A little into the semester, I moved in with my girlfriend so we could both save on rent. I'll call my girlfriend Lucy for the purpose of this post. One night, Lucy says she invited a friend from one of her classes for a game night. Sounded good to me. We invited a couple of other friends and it was a really fun night. Surprisingly, it turned out her friend, Sarah, was someone I knew from high school. We weren't close friends, but we knew each other and got along fine. After that night, Sarah was invited over pretty frequently for dinner, game nights, or to watch a movie. She even brought her boyfriend over a couple of times, Jay, but he never quite fit in. He'd be quiet or standoffish, wouldn't engage much, and just seemed like he never wanted to be there. It was clear that no one really felt comfortable having him there, but we invited him to be polite to Sarah. Fortunately, he only came over 2 or 3 times and found an excuse to refuse every other time. A month or 2 after this all started, Sarah called my girlfriend, crying, and asked if she could come over. Of course, we said yes. The story that was relayed was Jay was getting very upset with Sarah for coming over to our place so frequently and accused her of cheating on him. She never clarified if he thought she was cheating with me, Lucy, or both of us, but any option was ridiculous and never happened. But he confronted her and started verbally assaulting her, calling her all kinds of nasty names. At one point, she tried to walk past him to leave and he shoved her back. This caused her to trip over a coffee table, fall, and get a huge bruise on her butt and lower back. Lucy told me about the bruise as Sarah had shown her. I didn't see it for myself. Sarah swore up and down that he had never physically assaulted her before, and she believed it was just an accident. But I was annoyed. I wanted revenge. You don't mess with my friends, and you don't assault women. I wanted to beat the F out of him, but while I'm a very big guy, I've never been in a fight, and I'm not a violent person. But a revenge plan formed in my mind. At the time, I was working in the administration building of the school as a student employee. As part of my job, I could access anyone's student records, their fees, and their class schedule. The date was fast approaching that was the last possible day to drop or add classes without penalty or specific permission. So, I looked Jay up in the system, got his student ID number and the other information that I needed, and I put my plan into motion. On the last day to change schedules, I used the dedicated enrollment phones in the administration building. Internet class scheduling wasn't a thing that was set up yet, and I cancelled all of his classes. Not only that, but I went through and added every class I could find that had a course fee. If you owed a debt at the school, you couldn't get copies or your transcripts or anything else. Something that I didn't mention was that Jay was also a foreign student and couldn't stay in the country if he wasn't enrolled with a certain number of units. I wish I could give more info about the fallout, but as I didn't want this to get tracked back to me, I didn't tell anyone, nor did I pull up his records again for quite a while. I did get a little payoff though. Sarah was really worried about seeing him again. She'd broken up with him the night after he pushed her, as they had an English class together on Tuesdays. She said that on Tuesday he was there, but there was also someone new standing in the class. He was standing because there weren't enough seats. The teacher, seeing that there were more people than should be, held roll. And guess who wasn't on it? You're right, it was Jay. Apparently, after I dropped all his classes, someone on the waitlist got in. Jay tried to argue with the teacher, but as Teach had the official class roster and Jay wasn't on it, there was nothing he could do. Sarah said she never saw Jay in that class again. I don't know much more about what happened. Lucy and I eventually broke up, so I didn't see Sarah very often after that. After a while, I did look up Jay's class schedule, and all of the classes with course fees were gone, but he didn't have any other classes on the books either. I wanted to assume he was kicked out of school, but I didn't try to confirm it. Either way, Sarah didn't have to have a class with him, and while he probably deserved more, he was definitely inconvenienced and possibly kicked out of school. Sometimes I worry I was too harsh, but then I remember that he deserved it. Mess with me, but not my friends. Okay, great revenge, OP, and in my opinion, you weren't too harsh at all, and yeah, arguably he did deserve more. I suppose the question is, and we don't know because, as you said, you wanted to keep a low profile so you weren't caught up in this and people didn't understand or realize that you were involved. But if Jay was kicked out of the country, and we don't know if he was or wasn't, which is annoying, then this is top tier revenge. If he wasn't and he just got kicked out of the school, hopefully had to pay those course fees as well, it's still good revenge. You've still ruined his college experience and that set him back a number of years in life, I'm sure. But if he was kicked out of the country, then that is next level revenge. It's also important to remember, guys, that this happened a long time ago, decades ago, because I was thinking there, and you might be thinking the same thing. Did Jay not raise this as a problem and say, look, clearly something's happened here. Can we not sort something out? And you also might be thinking, how can a school employee have this much administrative power? But I don't know. Back in the day when the internet wasn't so much of a thing, I feel like this could definitely have happened, to be honest with you. Pick me to be eliminated? Two can play. Back in 2015, I, a 37-year-old woman, was working as a manufacturing engineer for a fishing company. I'd been there for almost 5 years and worked with new packaging line implementation mainly. But the process engineer had quit, so I picked up that job as well. I was working 16-hour days most of the time and on call 24/7, but I felt that I'd be able to rise in the ranks if I showed my dedication to the company. Q, douche head manager. For some reason, he didn't like me, and he would try to make me look incompetent and weak in front of other departments. He criticized my ideas, but then gave the ideas to others to do. Everyone else worried about me and the hours I was putting in, and drinking 2 to 3 monsters a day, but my manager just wanted more. Then came the first of the month. I came into work and started back on a line teardown that needed to be done. I was wrenching away when I started hearing people being called into HR. I was confused. What was going on? I went to talk to my work besties and they were just as confused. As I walked back to my cubicle, I saw one of the women from accounting crying as she carried out a box of her stuff while being escorted. I remember hearing her name being called. My heart fell to my stomach. Then, at around 8:30 a.m, I heard it. My name being called. I thought, well, so much for dedication. I walked into HR, got the position elimination lecture, and was informed I had no job, no insurance, and 4 months of pay for just 1 month shy of 5 years. I was destroyed. I had never received a bad review or even a PIP, But my manager had to pick one person from his department, and lo and behold, he chose me. I had to be escorted back to my desk to pack up, tears streaming down my face, and my packaging ME shouting, "This is BS," as he had to walk me out. The manager wouldn't even give me the chance to say anything to him, just made his second in command walk me out. And the kicker, my birthday was the next day. As the day progressed, I heard about more people being let go, at least one person from each department and a couple of managers. They were close to retirement. Out of them all, 90% were women, including a couple of work besties. We found that the conglomerate that owned the company was selling it, and we were the fallout for making the books look good. I still didn't understand why I was chosen from the engineering department. There was one person who was 1 year from retirement who would have gladly left, his words to me, and another on a PIP. He told me so I could help him. I was shattered and lost. So I took 1 day to grieve and get drunk with my besties on my birthday. Then I hit the job sites. 1 month later, I started a new job that I absolutely loved. But here is where it gets good. One morning, about 6 months after I started my new job, the plant director called me into his office. His office was only about 15 feet from my cubicle, so we got to know each other, and he was a pretty cool guy, so I walked in with a "What's up?" and a smile. He looks up and says, "I have a resume for the plant manager position. You used to work at that fishing place, didn't you?" I said, "I did." "Well, did you know or work with douchehead manager?" I said, "Yeah, he was my manager." "Well, how was he to work for and with?" I smiled and said, "He was an okay person, but he was a really great bus driver, if you get what I mean." He smiled, picked up the paper and showed it to me. It was douchehead's resume, and he'd been let go the same day I was. I was in shock. And then the best thing happened. The director took the paper, ripped it up and threw it away. He said that was all he needed to know, and I walked out with my jaw on the floor. Douchehead had been unemployed since that day, and unknowingly, I got my petty revenge. Okay, so just reading through the comments, somebody said, "What do you mean by bus driver?" Because I'm going to be honest, I had no idea as well. Throws people under the bus. Okay, I get it. A bus driver is someone who throws others under the bus so often, he's become proficient and efficient at it, and now just lines up his co-workers and drives the bus over them. He has become the bus driver. That is how often he's been throwing people under the bus. Wow. Quite a cool little metaphor there. Might use it. The one thing I would say about this story, and I think we've seen this before, is I wish you had interviewed him, or you had said to your manager there, who, by the way, I've got to say, your manager's a great guy. Like, if you've got a manager who will trust your opinion that easily and you know, cares that much about you and what your values are and your thoughts on other people, to say, okay, if this one person has had bad experiences before, then even if they're really qualified, seem good on paper, whatever, no, we're not going to touch this person, then, you know, you've got a good relationship with your manager, that is for sure. But I do kind of feel like maybe it would have been unreal if you got him in and then you were sitting in on the interview, your manager, you, and your old manager, and then as your old manager walks in, he sees you. Like, that just would have been so good, but probably unrealistic, to be honest, and would have wasted a lot of people's time, including obviously the company that you're currently working for now. Don't care about the douchehead, obviously, but probably that was not realistic, but would have been amazing. Nonetheless, phenomenal revenge. I learned the real reason my ex left me. I'm posting this because I really don't know how to feel about it, and I just needed to get it off my chest. Sorry for the long post, there's a lot to unpack. Do not apologize to me or anyone listening, we love the long posts. Backstory first. So, around 2 years ago, my ex-fiance, who I'd been in a relationship with for almost 10 years, unceremoniously just left me. It never fully made sense to me, as there were no warning signs, we were actively planning our wedding, and finally agreed to try for a baby, as we were both in our 30s and time was ticking. Then, one day, he just started acting sort of off, wasn't saying I love you before he left for work for the day, was spending more time out drinking with his friends than he was at home. He'd been struggling with his mental health since lockdown, so I assumed he was having a bit of a downward spiral. So I sat him down one day and just asked him if everything was okay. He tried to brush it off initially and kept saying he was fine. So I changed the question and asked if we were okay. He looked like he really didn't want to answer. So I asked again. He paused, and in that moment, I knew It was over. I asked if he still loved me. He said he did, but wasn't in love with me anymore. And that was it. Within a week, he had moved out, leaving 90% of his belongings to be collected at a later date and to serve as a constant reminder that he was just gone. To say it hit me hard was an understatement. I spiraled massively. I was at the lowest point I'd ever been in my life, so I tried to end it all. It just hurt too much, feeling like there was something so wrong with me that he had to just leave. Fortunately, a friend managed to get me to a hospital before I did any serious damage to myself. And while I still felt awful about myself most of the time, it got a little easier. I ended up dating that friend a few months later. A lot of people said it was too soon to move on, but honestly, I never set out to have another relationship at all. But his constant support, presence, and reassurance that there was nothing wrong with me made me want to spend time with those who truly gave a dang about me. And in time, we developed feelings for each other. We had a beautiful relationship filled with love and laughter. And much to our surprise, I ended up pregnant 9 months into our relationship. We decided to keep the baby even though our relationship was still in its early stages. And 9 months later, our beautiful daughter was born. We are still as strong as ever today and continuing to build an amazing life together as a family. Now on to present day. I guess my ex has been reflecting on the past recently due to a lot of deaths in his family, and his mother, who I'm still close with today, reached out to me to ask whether I'd be willing to meet up with him as he had something to get off his chest. She didn't know what he wanted to talk to me about, as it was something he could only discuss with me apparently, but she would understand if I said no. I decided to think about it for a few days before I agreed that I would meet up with him at a local coffee shop. I got there early because, mama needs her caffeine fix with these early morning wake-ups and night feeds. I was already sat down when he came in, and he gave me the saddest looking smile while I merely just nodded to him and motioned for him to sit down and get out whatever he needed to tell me. I was a little bit speechless at what he had to say. He said that when we started trying for a baby and nothing was happening, even though we were closely tracking my ovulation cycle and testing every day for that sweet spot, he realized that something wasn't right. So he secretly took a day off work to see a fertility doctor. They found that due to an undiagnosed issue in one of his testicles, the likelihood of him ever being able to conceive a biological child of his own was incredibly low. He knew that I loved him so deeply that I would have given up my dream of having children just for him, and he said he couldn't live with that on his conscience, that I deserved to have the life and family I'd always wanted, only with someone else. He kept apologizing profusely for hurting me so much in the process, but tried to rationalize that I'd got what I'd wanted in the end, so his plan ultimately worked. I sat there silent for a few minutes and just looked at him, dead in the eyes, and said that that was never his decision to make. He took away my choice and nearly destroyed me in the process, and I got up and left. It's been a few days and I'm still processing. My partner knew I was meeting up with my ex and he knows something is up, but he's given me space until I feel ready to talk about it. But honestly, I'm shook. Like, did my ex honestly think I'd be like, okay, thanks for letting me know, and then we'd be all friends again? Wow. How about that for an original post? I mean, the craziest thing about this is that he's come and said to you, OP, I actually, in the end, did you a favor because look at you now. You've got what you always dreamed of. You've got a child, you've got a loving husband, etc. Don't worry about the fact that you almost unalived yourself and were left in a terrible, terrible place when I, for no real reason apparently, walked out on you. And actually the actual reason, well, I'm not sure I believe it, but according to me, the actual reason is that I am so bad at communication that I just had to hide this. When in reality, there are so many other ways around this. Like, this is what I don't understand. Surely you just have a conversation with your partner rather than being like, oh, I feel so ashamed of this that I'm going to keep it a secret and then just out of the blue break up with them with no explanation. That just makes no sense. And that is why, to be honest, I don't really believe your ex at all here. Like, surely you would just say, listen, this is what's going on. I understand it. If you want to leave me, if not, whatever. And then presumably OP would say, no, I love you. I want to be with you. If she wanted to leave, fine. At least you know. But there are loads of other options. You could adopt. You could try loads of like modern treatments. He said it's a likelihood that he'd never be able to conceive. That's not a formality. It's not like concrete, is it? So I don't think that this is the legit reason here. I think something's up and you're being told a lie by someone that, to be honest, seems quite manipulative. But anyway, before we get into the update, let's see what the comments think. First comment, he was having an affair that is now over and is reflecting. He used a lie to try to make himself seem like a martyr. Wow. I mean, yeah, kind of what I was saying, but I didn't really, expect or assume it went to that length, but yeah, maybe that's what it was. OP said to this, I did suspect that for quite some time. There was a girl in our friend group he had become oddly close to over the last year of our relationship. She was one of the main people he was going out drinking with when I started realizing something wasn't quite right. So my mind did go there for a while. He ended up moving in with her as housemates after he moved out. She tried coming over to collect the remainder of his things. I was pretty mad and said I didn't consent to her being there, and if she didn't leave my property, I'd call the police on her for trespassing. I don't believe anything was ever actually going on there though, as I heard through the grapevine that she was seeing some drug dealer shortly after my ex moved in with her. What a lovely woman. Somebody else said, absolutely, your ex-boyfriend had no right to take away your choice in this matter. Did he know about your failed attempt to unalive yourself? Why did he not come back then and admit that it was all a mistake? Because you couldn't have babies if you're dead, right? I think it's either he's an absolute moron or he's trying to give you some BS reasons so that you think of him in a better light going forward. OP replied, yeah, he was aware of the attempt. We had a pretty close-knit group of friends, some of whom were really supportive afterwards. They made him aware. I got a, quote, I hope you're okay, sorry for everything message after he found out. So that is 7 words after your ex has tried to unalive themselves. Nice, man. I never responded, and it was at that point that I blocked and deleted his number and all of his socials because I couldn't trust myself not to drunk message him begging for him to come back. Yeah, fair enough. Somebody else said, there were other ways to deal with his infertility. Donor sperm, adoption, exactly what I said. The fact that he would rather have taken this decision from you than discuss options with you proves that he was not a suitable long-term partner. There are lots of hard decisions couples need to make together, and he demonstrated that he was unwilling to give you any real agency in your life. You are better off now with your new partner. That is 100% correct. Oh, I know I'm absolutely so much better off. My current partner is pretty much the opposite of my ex, which was why it was such a surprise that I developed feelings for him. He's extremely different from my usual type, but he's such a good egg. We had the chance to talk about everything late last night. Our daughter is going through a bit of a sleep regression, so late nights are pretty common for us at the minute. And he was super empathetic and equally as annoyed. I got my first period since having the baby this morning, and he ran me a bath and told me to go sulk for as long as I need to. Bless him. Now that's all well and good, but that isn't really the point. Like, yeah, you're better off now, but it's not up to your ex to say, look, you're better off now. I made the decision for you because I knew it was going to work out. Like, just crazy. Anyway, 5 days later, we got this update. First of all, thank you all for your lovely comments and messages of support. I was not expecting my post to blow up like it did. So I wasn't really expecting to make an update to my previous post, and definitely not this soon, but boy, does it get interesting. So, of course, I plan to leave this situation alone at this point and completely put it behind me. However, my former mother-in-law reached out to me as I hadn't spoken to her in a few days, which is quite unlike me. A few people said in a few comments that I should cut her off as well as the ex, but this woman was like a mother to me for almost 10 years. When I was going through difficulties with my own family, she opened her home to me and gave me a safe place to stay if needed. She had been more of a parent to me than my own parents and basically adopted me as the daughter that she had always wanted. So when I say we're incredibly close, I genuinely mean it, regardless of anything that's happened with her son. We'll always have a really strong relationship outside of that. We typically have a good catch up once a week and message in between. Nothing I say to her gets passed on to her son, and from what I can gather, the trickles of information he gets is through the grapevine of the group of friends we mutually share. So when she reached out to see if I was okay yesterday, I decided I'd pop over and catch up with her. Okay, that clears a lot of stuff up for me because I was kind of thinking, why is your ex going through his mum to chat to you? Sure, you might be close, but you guys were together. But now that makes a lot of sense. Anyway, turns out he came clean to her when she asked exactly what had gone on, as she hadn't heard of me in a few days and was worried. She went absolutely ballistic at him and currently isn't speaking to him at all. Then she told me something I didn't know and something she assumed that I'd known all along. It turns out that when he was born, he had undescended testicles. He had the surgery to correct it, but there was always going to be the chance that he would have fertility issues in adulthood. He was meant to go for checkups once he passed puberty age to see whether there was any lasting damage, and he claimed to his mother that he'd gone to these and everything was fine, but neither of us actually believed this. So the entire time we discussed having children, he knew there was a possibility that all he was shooting was blanks, but he neglected to actually let me know this for 10 freaking years. Bear in mind, we were probably having unprotected sex for 2 years of our relationship, not actively trying, but we had agreed that if something happened, we'd be happy about it. So I think when we were actively trying to have a baby and nothing was happening, it sort of gave him the mental tip-off that all was not well, and he finally decided to get that checkup he'd been putting off. I'm flabbergasted, guys. In regards to my partner and my relationship, we are absolutely fine. He's used to my sulky episodes. I did eventually fill him in after a few days of being mildly annoyed, and he agreed that it was super effed up, and agreed with a lot of the comments that his timing for telling me all this was absolutely comical. We did suspect for a while that the real reason he decided to leave was cheating initially, because he had gotten strangely close to one of the girls in our friend group, the majority of which dropped me like hot trash once we split. Turns out there's nothing going on there, but another little tidbit off my ex's mum that she found out also. Guys, he's dating this girl's 60-year-old mother. Wait, that same girl? Oh my god, wasn't expecting that. This deep into the story, my word. Good lord, his life is a dumpster fire. I don't even think I'm mad anymore, just mildly amused. Absolutely done with that. Wow. Well, good thing he was firing blanks, because that meant that OP didn't even need to dodge the bullets. Thank you guys. I'll be here all week. Actually, I upload every day, so if you want to see more tomorrow, just subscribe if you want more content. Just like that. Wow, how funny was that? Sometimes I do make myself laugh. The one thing that I don't get about all of this is, like, yeah, great story. And, like, really, really tough for you. Why do people like this just not communicate? It makes no sense to me. I get it. A lot of people are like, I don't know, especially guys, like stoic, and they keep their emotions to themselves. I think, you know, guys are getting better at that these days. I know that like my group of friends are pretty good at that, to be fair. The majority of them anyway. You know who you are. But, you know, I don't know, like something like this, where you know you're really like damaging the other person by not checking things out. And I get it. He was probably really ashamed of the possibility that he was firing blanks. But still, you owe it not only to the other person, but also to yourself to know what's going on. Because, like, would it not be much less anxiety, much less of an anxiety-inducing life if you knew what was going on with you in a fertility sense? And then, of course, like, you know, you've got this woman who you're supposed to love, your partner, who really wants kids, and you know that there might be something wrong with you and you're not getting it checked out. That is just horrible. But like, even just do it for yourself. If you're a selfish person, still do it for yourself. I don't know. Makes no sense to me. I mean, unless he didn't actually want to be with you and was just looking for a way out of it. But I don't know. If he wanted to be with you, why would he do this? Clearly, this guy has just got a screw loose or two. I mean, I think, honestly, it might be easier to comprehend it if he was just cheating. Because at least then you'd be like, well, he didn't love me in the first place. This stuff is just, like, weird. Surely you just have a conversation and tell her what's going on and say, listen, this is it. It's up to you what you want to decide to do. And then you'd probably just have a good conversation about it and make an informed decision. Doing this is never going to work. Like, what were you hoping to happen? So dumb. Someone in the comments asked, and it's a good question, why did the ex reach out now? What was his angle? Now that OP has a kid, he can come back? That guy has huge issues. Yeah, it's a good point. Why now? Why now with the timing? And also, again, like, why not after your ex tried to unalive herself and you realize what impact you've had on her life? I don't know. Someone replied anyway, probably to help his own guilt. He's told himself he did a good thing, a selfless thing, and that the ends justify the means, as in he broke up with OP, now she has a child. but he needs OP to sign off on it for him to fully convince himself that he was being a good person and to signal to other people that he did right. Maybe that's it. But I will tell you this if you're watching. You didn't do right. You are a clown. My mother-in-law decided to gossip with my daughter about my marriage, blowing a giant hole in my life. My wife cheated on me nearly 10 years ago. I won't get into the specifics as they're unimportant, but due to the fact that I saw blame on both of our parts, I forgave her and we moved past it. My daughter is 16 years old, and she only just found out from my mother-in-law, who seems to have decided that she was old enough to hear the family gossip and that she would be mature enough not to confront her. Initially, my wife thought I had told her and came into my office where I'd been to ask me what the heck I was thinking and if I was trying to destroy their relationship. She and my daughter have been strained for a couple of years now, lots of arguing on both sides. She refused to believe that I hadn't said anything at first until my daughter entered the room and joined in on the screaming that I was too weak and her own mother had sold her out. The fighting went on a long time, and honestly, I may as well have not been there for all the good I did. I tried to step between them when I was concerned, but that only ended with some ringing in my ear. Eventually, my wife left to cool off, and my daughter and I could talk. She wasn't happy with me either, and she didn't hesitate to tell me so, but she wasn't screaming or throwing things anymore, so I just let her get it out. She asked me why I stayed, and I was honest that I was no perfect husband, and I decided not to end my marriage, break up our home, and destroy her childhood for something that I held blame in as well. The entire time I was speaking, she just kept watching me with this sad face that made me uncomfortable. But when I finished, she just shook her head and said that I needed to leave my wife, her mum, and that the cheating wasn't the only issue. She started bringing up every insignificant flaw that my wife has. She brought up my wife getting angry at me because I had put too much creamer in her coffee, for example. Just trivial stuff. I told her as much, but she just kept shaking her head. It ended up turning into an argument where she insisted I was some sort of victim and making some kind of getaway plan. I kept trying to talk her down, but that was going nowhere. I first tried my wife, but I found my call went straight to voicemail, so I called my mother-in-law to inform her of the situation. But my wife had already made it there and planned to stay overnight to calm down because she didn't want to see either of our faces. It's been a few days now and I still haven't seen her or heard from her, but her mother informs me she's okay, just very emotional. So I'm also scared for my wife. She's had mental health struggles before, and if she's going through that again, I should be there to help. A quick edit at the end of this post from OP here, saying, to the people who have commented or private messaged me to say that I shouldn't care, my wife almost died the last time she had an episode, and I don't think even my daughter, as angry as she is right now, wants her mum dead. My daughter told me she hopes her mum never comes back. I'm just feeling defeated and tired. I've done everything I can to keep this family afloat, and somehow I'm still failing. It's beginning to feel like I always do at everything and always will fail at everything as long as I live. All right, let's jump straight into the comments here. I mean, from my perspective, it's pretty clear that this mother-in-law just has ruined everything. I don't know why she's felt the need to get involved, but let's see what the people of Reddit are saying. Somebody said, okay, I've got a few thoughts here. 1, your mother-in-law is completely in the wrong. It's no one's business to fill your daughter in on family gossip that includes her parents. 2, I'm sure that some of this is normal teenage rebellion stuff. However, your wife got angry about too much creamer in the coffee. You say trivial stuff, but how often does she get overly sensitive about trivial stuff? There is a point where it becomes you managing your wife's emotional outbursts instead of your wife working on her own issues. Does your daughter potentially have a point? Yeah, fair question, I suppose. I mean, I don't really agree with that comment, to be honest. I feel like some people do sometimes get angry about trivial stuff. That is being human, and, you know, people in relationships have that sort of dynamic a lot. Like, it's just standard. Especially when you're like, well, my husband should know that you shouldn't put too much creamer in the coffee. Whatever. But OP replied to this saying, I actually 120% agree. I'm slightly in shock that my wife is mad at me and our daughter, but somehow not too angry to stay in the house of the person who told her. I don't know. That part has been messing me up a lot, I think. My daughter's definitely been going through some teenage rebellion stuff, which I haven't minded because it's introduced me to a lot of new music when she's mad. But my wife has had some issue because she's scared when my daughter gets older, she'll regret all the crazy hair or odd clothes. I've been trying to help her with that because I was a little teenage dirtbag myself, and my daughter is a good kid. No real trouble out of her other than being a smart butt sometimes, which she comes by honest. To the rest, I don't know. My wife is temperamental, but she's not violent. I mean, she just gets mad easily. She gets over it pretty fast though. Like, yeah, she yelled about the coffee thing, dumped it out and got a new cup, and it's never come up again. I honestly forgot about it until my daughter brought it up. It really wasn't a big deal. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got from that, but the other stuff I agree with OP. Makes sense. Now here is a proper question. What on earth was your mother-in-law actually thinking to tell that to a kid? She sounds like a miserable jerk who loves to just stir up stuff. I wouldn't even be remotely cordial or polite to her again. It's a great point. What on earth is your mother-in-law trying to gain by doing this? Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, listen, families and people go through things through generations. I understand that. But just because you are a family member of this person, just because it's family, doesn't mean you have to know everything about everyone in your family. Like, some things are best kept private, especially something like this. I mean, I'll ask you guys the question right now, and I'll ask it to myself. Would I want to know if my parents had cheated on each other back in the day? Probably not. OP replied, from what she said, for some reason, she was idiotic enough to think that my daughter would keep it to herself. Which, honestly, I'm glad she didn't, because I know how secrets like that can eat at a kid. And that it was harmless gossip, apparently, because it was so long ago. And I stayed. Like, if I'd forgiven her, somehow my daughter wasn't meant to be affected by it. I've been working on staying calm because she's my only link to my wife right now, and yelling at her is a good way to get blocked and have no sure way of getting updates on her. Somebody else commented, okay, just because someone isn't violent, it doesn't mean that they're not making an emotionally hostile environment for everyone else. And actually, you may need to examine that. Or I anticipate your daughter will want to leave the house as soon as she's able to. My dad remarried a woman with a similar temperament. She was quick to anger, but quick to move on. It honestly felt like an emotional rollercoaster sometimes. Dad loved her, so he looked past this flaw as her partner, chalking it off to just the way she is. But she's a good person. And yeah, that was true. She wasn't a bad person. But he failed to realize her emotional outbursts made us kids feel like the vibe around the house was tense, since small trivial things could make her snap even for just a minute. It just wasn't pleasant to be around at all. OP replied to this saying, well, they were always so close growing up. I mean, I felt like the bonus parent at times because they were so close when she was little. Like, I remember being a bit jealous about it. I'd laugh and think to myself that I thought dads and daughters were supposed to have the special relationship. They only really started fighting when my daughter was 14. I guess I still feel guilty because their first fight was 100% my fault, and I still blame myself for it. Now that same commenter replied saying, really? Their first fight was 100% your fault? Well, that's actually pretty amazing. You managed to force two other people to fight and basically created the difficulties in a mother-daughter relationship all by yourself? It sounds like you're very prone to taking responsibility or blame for other people's actions. This can be a good trait up to a point, but not when it's combined with another person who's emotionally abusive and likes to shift blame for their actions onto someone else, which may describe your wife. Your daughter is telling you your wife is abusive, and she's telling you that the way you make excuses for and accommodate your wife hurts her, makes her feel unprotected by you, disappointed in you, and sad for you. These things can all be true even if your wife is a good person in other ways, and even if she loves your daughter. You've told yourself that accepting your wife's explosive temper is a form of maturity on your part. But for your daughter's sake, and your own, and even your wife's, you may need to ask yourself if what you're really doing is actually being an enabler of abusive behavior. Wow. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it like that, despite previous comments that I've read there, until that third paragraph there. Because this commenter is right. Like, if your daughter is telling you that her mum, your wife, is abusive and like she is doing all these things that are hurting her and damaging the relationship between her and her mum, and yeah, just isn't a nice person to be around, and she's the one that's saying to you, look, Dad, you can't see this, but I'm telling you right now, like, I don't really feel protected. I feel like you are, a bit of a doormat here and you're letting this sort of happen. Then she is right, because that's her feelings. And yeah, maybe you don't feel it, but as somebody said in the comments a bit higher up, yeah, It can look like maybe you're just joking around, or, partner to partner, it's all right because you're used to it, I suppose. But actually for the kids, they're not. And they might feel like, in the house, they have to tread on eggshells around their parents, especially obviously a mother like this. Opie replied to this anyway, saying, I just don't know if I can see it that way. I mean, my mum used to be really abusive when I was young in more ways than one. My daughter doesn't know about that. My mum died before she was born. Don't worry, because I'm sure that your mother-in-law will tell her. Anyway, my wife has never been anything like that at all. I do intend to talk to my daughter because a lot of people are saying my wife may be hurting my daughter behind closed doors, other than the fighting, which we've been trying to work out for a while. Jesus. I will speak with her, and depending on her answers, I'll go from there. The biggest reason I dismissed my daughter's concerns, though, was because it was all about me. Like, during that talk, she never spoke up about her mother hurting her at all. If she'd even told me that she had no reason for it, but she was afraid of her mother, I would have taken that to heart, and we could have figured it out from there. I just don't see my wife shouting and pouring out some coffee as anything remotely close to my mum. Yeah, at this point in this story, I have to agree with that. I'm sorry. There's pouring out coffee and getting annoyed at trivial things, and there's actual abuse, and I don't think these two things line up at all. Anyway, final comment before we get into the update. Tell us more about the mother-in-law. Does she usually intrude on your personal lives like this? OP says, my mother-in-law and my wife were always close. She said more than once that her mother is her best friend. Intrude? It's hard to say. I don't particularly like her knowing everything about our marriage because it's weird to me. But then I had no relationship to speak of with my mother when she was alive, so I've got no idea if that's actually just me being weird. No, I don't think so. But then again, I can't exactly sit here and say that I wouldn't tell my parents if I was in a long-term relationship, if my wife cheated on me, for example, or I cheated on my wife, I'd have to tell them that. So, yeah, there's being intrusive or there's just knowing key stuff. Now, what I will say is, I hope my parents wouldn't then go and tell my daughter what I'd done or what my partner had done. That's probably a step too far. Anyway, let's get into the update. Now, this was posted just a week ago at the time of recording, 13 months after the original. It's been a while. I'll probably regret posting this as much as I did the first time, though for different reasons. Before I begin, I want to thank all the kind people who reached out with genuine advice and with whom I had lovely conversations. I appreciate you more than I can say. Checking my history, I saw that I never updated after the conversation with my daughter about her situation with my wife. We talked, and it went worse than I expected, but better than most of the comments. She never hit my daughter or threatened her. My daughter did bring up the yelling, and I listened, though she said she was never afraid of her mother, but she started to hate her when she noticed how she treated me, hence the change in appearance and rebelling. She liked that I stood up for her when it came to her new style, because then I was standing up for something. That makes me laugh a bit now, but at the time I was confused. We talked for a long time, and she said she thought maybe she could get over the resentment she had for her mother if she didn't have to see the way she treats me. I didn't much like that at the time, and I admit I argued that I was an adult. You don't have to fight my fights for me. But my daughter then said something like, well, if I don't, who will? And it just kind of stopped me in my tracks, because my only answer, sometimes you have to pick your battles, sounds weak when you pick none of them. I still intended to try to work on my marriage despite the comments. I really hoped to turn things around because of their previous relationship, and frankly how much I still loved my then wife. But then she didn't come home for weeks. I don't know if it was my daughter's needling or the fact that I could tell she was upset at being abandoned by her mother at the first sign of trouble, but one day I eventually reached out and asked my ex-mother-in-law when my wife was going to come home and act like an adult, and was told she was looking into divorce attorneys, and that if I wanted her back, I should really work on getting my daughter to apologize. What on earth is that? It all felt so manipulative, yes, exactly, and I just got so angry. I just hung up and spoke to my own lawyer. After being served, she tried to come back and cried that it was her mental health, but I was still so angry, I just shut her down and told her to leave. Divorce was finalized a while ago. My daughter stays with me most of the time, since her mother moved out of state afterwards, and she wants to go to college in the area when the time comes. But she visits my mother-in-law and speaks to her mother on the phone sometimes. As much as I hate to admit it, their relationship is improving since the divorce. I don't hate my ex-wife. Even if many, including my daughter, categorize her as abusive, she's the first woman I ever really clicked with in that way, and though I don't love her anymore, probably the last. I don't mind it so much. I have a full life without her around, and a quieter one as well. But anyway, thank you all again for listening, and I'm bracing for the I told you so's. I don't blame you, you did. Wow, that is crazy. I didn't quite expect the comments to be as correct as I suppose it turns out they were, but let's see what the commenters were saying after this update. It does seem obvious that you were being a doormat if your own child viewed herself as needing to be your savior from her mother. Then learning the betrayal made how she felt 10 times more valid. I believe your ex-mother-in-law wanted this outcome and felt similar to your daughter. Hopefully you're doing better for yourself and listening to your daughter more instead of being defensive. Good luck with everything. I'm sorry. I can't agree with this. And I'm going to have to turn my face cam on to say what I want to say. Hiya, it's me, Red. And let me tell you something really quickly. The thing is, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, teenage kids, I think pretty often are going to look at their parents and be like, oh, what, mum, you got to do this. Dad, you got to do this. Like, that's sort of what teenagers do. They think they know it all. They're in that rebellious stage or whatever. And they're sort of like, you know, trying to get involved potentially in their parents' relationship when they see something that might be a little bit wrong, but actually they don't really know the full story. Maybe I'm not like appreciating what a child can see in these situations as much as I should be, but I don't know, like, let the parents work it out. Let them do it. And I get it, like, she was kind of standing up for you, I suppose, or wanted you to do more. Fine. But I do genuinely agree with your point before that, you know, you're an adult and you will deal with this in the way you want to deal with it. Like, there has to be some sort of boundary there between a father and daughter when dealing with your wife. Now, the one thing, again, that I completely disagree with in this comment is the quote, I believe your ex-mother-in-law wanted this outcome and felt similar to your daughter. No, I'm not justifying what your mother-in-law did at all. How is that fair? Oh, I think that you need to stand up for yourself more and stop being such a doormat to my daughter. So because of that, I'm going to tell your daughter, my granddaughter, that my daughter cheated on you. That makes no sense. So I actually think this is a terrible comment. Sorry, because I actually disagree with the majority of it. How are you justifying this idiotic mother-in-law? I don't understand. Anyway, let's get back into OP's response. Okay, OP replies to this comment that I clearly dislike quite strongly by saying, my ex-mother-in-law may have, as in may have wanted you to suffer from this outcome and felt similar to your daughter. But with the trash storm she was constantly starting during the divorce, I doubt it. I think she just wanted to gossip and start drama. Exactly. Predictable for her. From what I hear from my daughter, I don't ask, but she tells anyway, my mother-in-law is broken up about my ex leaving the state. Yeah, I don't know. This woman is crazy. I'm sorry. Like, clearly she just wasn't happy with you. Wanted you to split up. Thought, oh, maybe then I'll get to spend more time with my daughter. No. She immediately leaves. All I can say really is, hold that. Somebody else said, she thought your daughter should apologize? Yeah, that's something else I forgot to mention. As OP said, like, the manipulation here is crazy. Getting your daughter to apologize because you told her that her mum cheated on her dad. Unreal. You'll be so much better off without her. OP replied, I'm fairly certain she wanted my teenage daughter to pretend she didn't even know, which is ridiculous, and regardless of my feelings on the incident, that wasn't going to happen, and I wouldn't want it to. Somebody else commented, your daughter saved all 3 of your lives. What are you talking about? No, how? Your wife was abusive, your daughter was being abused, and so were you. No, I'm sorry. It's not abuse. This is not abuse. I know some of you in the comments will be disagreeing with me on that. It's not abuse, just like losing your temper a little bit. It's just who you are as a person. It's probably not that nice to be around, but it's not abusive. Like, not everyone is like calm the whole time. If you get angry because, oh, there's too much cream in your coffee. Yeah, shock. I've probably done that before. Am I abusive? No, obviously not. Anyway, let's continue on with this silly comment. I'm glad she was adult enough to finally put an end to this madness. I really hope your ex-wife gets serious mental help and your daughter doesn't have lasting effects from it. OP said, from what I know, my ex is finding herself. Good for her. I never even knew she was lost. My daughter is a strong young woman. stronger than I ever was or ever will be. I'm more proud of her than I can possibly explain, even without this situation. She's the best part of my life, and to quote the old sayings, when I count my blessings, I count her twice. OP added some additional info about his ex-mother-in-law and her visits, saying, she is no longer allowed in my house due to some of her actions over the past year, but my daughter is 17 now with her own car, and I won't prevent her from talking with her on the phone or visiting if she wants. She's never expressed a desire not to see her anymore, and I'm not going to force that issue. If she changes her mind, that's no problem for me, but I've been pretty clear that she has no obligation to cut off anyone over me. And then finally, why does OP's ex-mother-in-law actually hate OP? Well, there's a lot to that. She never really liked me exactly. She mostly tolerated me because I was a decent husband, in her words. But she tried to get me to drop the divorce since clearly my ex was having an episode when she brought it up in the first place. Then, when the divorce proceedings started, she insisted my ex should get full custody, despite my daughter and even my ex-wife arguing against it. Then it was division of assets, and she had a problem with anything not handed over to my ex, even ridiculous things. She argued my ex should get both cars. My ex was actually surprisingly reasonable, but it was like her mother wanted me punished for giving up on her. After a lot of screaming when she showed up at my house anytime I was home, I eventually told her that she was no longer welcome, and if she came back, I would call the police to escort her off the property. I think that scared her, and she hasn't been my problem since. Listen guys, as always, I'm interested to hear your thoughts, so let me know what you think in the comments down below, but I just don't really see this as abuse. I think, yeah, like, you have a bit of a scale, don't you, in terms of what abuse is, and I understand it. You know, it's not great how this woman has acted, but to call it like actual abuse, and people saying, oh, I'm actually worried that she's been hitting your daughter without you knowing, like, that obviously wasn't going on. Maybe I'm living in a dream world. Maybe I'm living in a fancy world, guys. You tell me. I just don't think that was ever going on. I think sometimes the people have read it, they jump to pretty crazy conclusions because they see stories like this a lot and they live for the drama. And a lot of these stories often do have pretty crazy things that happen, but I don't know. I didn't see it in this one. What can I say about this story, realistically? It was great because it involved a mother-in-law who was just absolutely, can't say that, but no, still can't say. I mean, I'm just looking at the comments. Is anyone saying anything about the abuse here? I don't know. I just don't know. Like, people in the comments are saying, oh, when I was the kid's age, I told my parents they should get a divorce due to all the fighting. And then they said, no, we love each other so much. It's like, at what point do you get a divorce for the benefit of your kids? And when do you stay together? Because, you know, some people are just fiery and they're always going to argue, and that's just their personality. So, like, do you get a divorce just because you're arguing a bit too much? Like, what, you know, at what point do you listen to your kids when you're actually like, well, can you stop arguing? Do you then say, yeah, you're right, we'll get a divorce, or do you actually try and change how you are? I don't know, like, it's a bit of a confusing one. Anyway, I'm rambling. Get your comments in down below. What do you think about this one? As always, very interested to hear your thoughts, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care of yourselves and peace.